The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. For millennia, Jedi and Sith have debated whether the Force has a will of its own, whether it guides events towards some cosmic purpose. But what happens when something from beyond the stars, beyond even the Force's domain, crashes into this delicate balance? What happens when 7 heroes, forged in a different universe entirely, are torn from their world and thrust into a war they never asked to join? The Battle of Apocalypse had raged for 3 days. Darkseid's forces pushed against every defense the Justice League could muster. Superman traded blows with the new god himself while Wonder Woman led the ground assault against Parademon hordes. Batman coordinated global defenses from the Watchtower. Flash and Cyborg worked to disable the boom tube network that kept channeling reinforcements from Apocalypse. Green Lantern and Aquaman held the flanks, their powers stretched to breaking points. Then everything went wrong. Cyborg's attempt to shut down the primary boom tube succeeded, too well. The dimensional gateway didn't simply close, it destabilized catastrophically. Mother Box technology, designed to punch holes through space and time itself, tore apart in a cascade failure that ripped reality like cheap fabric. The resulting explosion of transdimensional energy consumed everything within a 5-mile radius. The Justice League didn't die. They simply ceased to exist in their universe. For an eternal instant, they fell through the spaces between dimensions, a void where physics meant nothing and existence itself was negotiable. Then, with the violence of a supernova, reality reasserted itself and spat them out. But not together. Not even close. 7 heroes scattered across a galaxy they'd never seen, on worlds they'd never imagined, in a universe whose very laws operated differently than everything they'd ever known. Some crashed on civilized worlds under the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. Others fell onto backwater planets where their arrival went unnoticed by anyone except local scavengers. Each faced their own moment of terrible understanding. They were alone, stranded, and utterly unprepared for what came next. This is the story of how Earth's greatest heroes became legends in a galaxy far, far away. This is the story of power meeting the Force, technology encountering ancient mysticism, and hope facing an empire that spans a million worlds. This is the story of the Justice League's war for survival in the Star Wars universe, and how they learned that some battles transcend dimensions. The Empire era was a dark time for the galaxy. Emperor Palpatine's iron grip had crushed the Republic, transformed the Jedi into hunted refugees, and established a regime of fear that reached from the core worlds to the Outer Rim. The Rebel Alliance fought desperately against impossible odds, striking from hidden bases and fleeing before Imperial retaliation. Into this powder keg of tyranny and resistance, 7 wildcards arrived, heroes who'd never heard of the Force, who knew nothing of lightsabers or hyperspace, who had no idea that their very presence would shake the foundations of galactic order. The scattered Justice League would spend weeks separated, learning about this new universe through trial, error, and sometimes violence. They would discover that their powers, gifts that made them among the strongest beings in their home universe, functioned differently here. Superman would find that not all suns burned the same. Wonder Woman would learn that divine magic and the Force were distant cousins, neither fully understanding the other. Darth Vader meditated in his fortress and sensed them too, 7 impossible signatures scattered across the stars like seeds planted in foreign soil. The Dark Lord's tactical mind immediately began calculating how to locate them, assess them, and either recruit or eliminate them before they could disrupt the Emperor's carefully orchestrated order. And in hidden rebel bases, leaders like Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar received fragmented reports of strange events: a man who could fly without a ship, a woman who deflected blaster fire with metal bracelets, a warrior who moved faster than scanners could track, a being whose body was half organic and half machine in ways no medical droid could explain. The rebellion didn't know what these reports meant, but they recognized opportunity when they saw it. In a war where every advantage mattered, these mysterious newcomers could tip the balance, if they chose the right side. The Justice League's war for survival had begun, though they didn't know it yet. Separated, confused, and struggling to understand a galaxy that defied everything they thought they knew about physics, technology, and the nature of power itself, 7 heroes would have to rediscover what made them a team. They would have to learn this new universe's rules, navigate its politics, and decide what kind of heroes they wanted to be in a conflict spanning billions of lives. Some would be captured. Some would join the rebellion out of necessity. Some would fight alone, carving their own paths through Imperial space. But eventually, inevitably, they would find each other again. And when the Justice League finally stood united in this new galaxy, both the Empire and the Rebellion would learn what it meant to face heroes who'd never been taught that some fights couldn't be won. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Superman opened his eyes to binary sunsets painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. His body ached, actually ached, in ways it hadn't since his early days on Earth, before his cells had fully adapted to yellow sun radiation. He lay in a crater of his own making, the impact site carved deep into rust-colored sand that stretched endlessly in every direction. Dantooine. Though he didn't know the planet's name yet. He tried to fly and managed only to hover a few feet before exhaustion pulled him back down. His heat vision flickered weakly when he attempted to test it. Superhearing brought him the sounds of distant machinery and alien languages he'd never encountered. The realization hit him like physical blow, something was wrong with his powers. The twin suns overhead burned with unfamiliar spectrums. His Kryptonian physiology had evolved to absorb and metabolize specific wavelengths of solar radiation. These suns were close, but not identical to Earth's. His body was trying to adapt, trying to draw power from these alien stars, but the process would take time. Days, maybe weeks. Until then, he was operating at perhaps 85% capacity, still superhuman by any standard, but vulnerable in ways he hadn't been since childhood. A sound reached him, repulsor engines. Superman looked up to see a boxy transport vessel approaching, its hull scarred and patched. The ship settled nearby with a hiss of landing gear, and a ramp descended. A figure emerged, humanoid, blue-skinned, with red eyes that studied him with calculating interest. Impressive crater, the alien said in a language Superman somehow understood, his superintellect already parsing syntax and grammar from context. I'm Cad Bane. And you, my friend, just became very valuable. The bounty hunter's hand moved toward his blaster. Superman's eyes flared with heat vision, weaker than usual, but still effective. The weapon melted in Bane's grip. The blue-skinned alien jerked his hand back. Eyes widening. I don't want trouble, Superman said, rising to his feet. I'm lost. I need information about where I am. Bane studied him for a long moment, his tactical mind clearly reassessing the situation. You're on Dantooine, Outer Rim. And if you can melt durasteel with your eyes, you're either a very unique Force user or something I've never seen before. He pulled out a comm link. Either way, the Empire pays well for anomalies. Superman moved, not at full speed, but fast enough. He closed the distance before Bane could activate the device, gently but firmly removing it from the bounty hunter's hand. I said I don't want trouble. But I won't let you sell me to anyone. On Naboo, Wonder Woman's arrival had been far more graceful. She'd regained consciousness mid-fall and used her flight to control her descent, landing in the swamps outside Theed with barely a splash. Her armor was intact, her weapons secure, but something felt wrong. The magic that connected her to the Olympian gods, the divine power that had sustained her for decades, flickered uncertainly, like a candle in the wind. This universe had gods, she could sense that much. The Force, she'd heard that word in the minds of nearby creatures, sensed it in the very fabric of reality around her. But it wasn't her gods. It wasn't Olympian magic. It was something else entirely, and her powers were struggling to adapt to its presence. She tested her strength by lifting a fallen tree. Still formidable, perhaps 90% of normal. Her flight worked, though it felt different, less like divine grace and more like willing herself through resistant air. The lasso of truth hummed at her hip, its magic seemingly unaffected. Her sword and shield remained as effective as ever. A patrol of soldiers in white armor emerged from the tree line, their weapons trained on her. Stormtroopers, though she didn't know the term yet. Their leader spoke through a helmet vocoder, unidentified individual. You are in violation of Imperial security protocols. Surrender immediately. Diana's hand moved to her sword hilt. These warriors moved with military precision, but something about their rigid formation and helmeted anonymity reminded her of oppressors she'd fought before. I mean no harm, she called out. But I will not surrender to those who threaten me unprovoked. Blaster fire answered her words. Diana's bracelets moved in blur, deflecting the energy bolts with metallic rings that echoed across the swamp. The stormtroopers' formation broke in confusion, their weapons, designed to overwhelm targets with sustained fire, were completely ineffective against her Amazonian reflexes. She didn't want to kill them. Instead, she moved with controlled violence, disarming and incapacitating with precision strikes. Within 30 seconds, 10 stormtroopers lay unconscious in the mud, their weapons destroyed. Diana stood among them, breathing steadily, and wondered what kind of galaxy she'd fallen into where soldiers attacked first and asked questions never. Batman's arrival on Coruscant had been the most strategically fortunate, and the most immediately dangerous. He'd crashed through the window of an abandoned warehouse in the lower levels, thousands of feet below the planet's glittering surface. His suit's armor had protected him from serious injury, but the impact had scattered his equipment across the grimy floor. He was already moving before full consciousness returned, years of training overriding pain and disorientation. Gather equipment. Assess surroundings. Identify threats. Establish temporary base of operations. The warehouse was part of Coruscant's industrial underbelly, a place where legitimate business didn't venture. Through broken windows, Batman saw a cityscape that made Gotham look provincial, towers stretching kilometers into the sky. Traffic flowing in three-dimensional patterns, alien species he'd never encountered mixing with humans in crowded passages. His cowl's systems were functional, already recording data and analyzing the technology around him. The advancement level was staggering, casual anti-gravity, energy weapons as common as firearms, faster than light travel apparently routine. Batman's tactical mind catalogued it all, understanding that his usual advantages of technology and information superiority were compromised here. A group of thugs, mixed species, armed with crude weapons, noticed him moving through the shadows. Their leader, a massive alien with tusks and mottled skin, laughed. Look what fell from the sky. Your fancy armor will fetch good credits, human. Batman didn't waste words. He moved through them like smoke, using their numbers against them, turning their weapons into liabilities. Within moments, 5 attackers lay groaning on the floor. The Dark Knight melted back into shadows, already planning his next moves. He needed information. He needed to understand this world's power structures, its laws, its conflicts. And most importantly, he needed to find his team. The Flash's arrival on Corellia had been the most disorienting. Barry Allen had been moving at near light speed when the dimensional rift consumed him, and the transition had nearly torn him apart. He'd materialized in a shipping yard, momentum carrying him through 3 cargo containers before he'd managed to stop. His connection to the speed force felt distant. Like trying to hear a familiar song through thick walls. He could still access it, could still move faster than normal humans could perceive, but his top speed had been cut dramatically. He tested it with a quick sprint across the shipyard, maybe 70% of normal velocity. Fast enough to be superhuman, but not fast enough to feel safe. What the hell was that? A dockworker shouted, having seen only a red and yellow blur. Barry ducked behind a stack of crates, his mind racing faster than his body currently could. Wherever he was, whatever had happened, he was cut off from everything he knew. The speed force connection was weakening further with each passing minute, as if this universe's physical laws were actively rejecting it. He needed to find the others. Needed to understand what had happened. But first, he needed to not get caught by whatever authorities governed this place. Green Lantern's ring had saved his life. Hal Jordan had been unconscious when he materialized in deep space near the planet Mandalore, and the ring had automatically created a life support bubble. He'd woken to stars he didn't recognize, constellations that made no sense, and a horrifying realization: his ring couldn't contact OA. The Green Lantern core connection, the vast network that linked all ring-bearers across the universe, was simply gone. His ring showed 80% charge with no way to access the central power battery for recharging. For the first time in his career as Green Lantern, Hal Jordan was operating with a finite power source. A patrol of ships approached, sleek fighters bearing unfamiliar insignia. His ring translated their hailing frequency: unidentified craft, you have entered Mandalorian space. State your business or be destroyed. Hal created a construct microphone. This is Green Lantern of Earth. I'm lost. I need assistance. The response was cold. Earth is not in our star charts. You will accompany us to the surface for interrogation. Resistance will be met with lethal force. Hal looked at his ring's charge indicator. Every construct used up precious power he couldn't replace. He needed to be smart about this. Understood. I'm following your lead. Aquaman had awakened underwater, the one mercy in his catastrophic arrival. He'd materialized in the oceans of Mon Cala, sinking through kilometers of alien sea before his Atlantean physiology had adjusted. The water here felt different, colder, denser, teeming with life, but nothing he recognized. He swam upward toward light filtering from above, his superhuman strength propelling him through the depths. Structures appeared, beautiful coral cities, architectural marvels that rivaled Atlantis itself. But something was wrong. The water carried vibrations of fear, violence, and oppression. He surfaced near one of the floating cities to see ships hovering overhead, massive wedge-shaped vessels bristling with weapons. Soldiers in white armor patrolled the platforms. And everywhere, the fish-like natives moved with the careful precision of people living under occupation. Arthur dove back beneath the surface, his mind working through implications. This was an aquatic civilization under military control. The warrior in him recognized occupation when he saw it. The king in him understood that these people needed help. But first, he needed to understand who was oppressing them and why. Cyborg's arrival had been the most technologically catastrophic. Victor Stone's consciousness, half organic, half digital, had been scattered across multiple computer systems when he materialized near an Imperial communications relay. His body had reformed over agonizing minutes as his mother box technology reassembled itself, pulling data from nearby networks to anchor his existence. When he finally stabilized, he found himself in a service corridor of an Imperial facility on Scarif, his systems flooded with information about this new galaxy. The Empire. The Rebellion. Hyperspace. The Force. Lightsabers. Thousands of years of history downloaded directly into his neural interface. And he'd been detected. Alarms blared. Stormtroopers converged on his position. Cyborg's arm cannon charged, but he hesitated. These were humans in armor, possibly just following orders. He'd never been comfortable with killing, and starting now in an alien galaxy seemed like a terrible precedent. Instead, he interfaced with the facility's systems and triggered a cascade of false alarms across multiple sectors. In the confusion, he slipped away, already planning how to use his technological advantage to survive long enough to find answers. 7 heroes, scattered across a hostile galaxy. Each facing their own crisis, their own challenges, their own difficult choices. None of them knowing that the Emperor himself had already sensed their arrival. None of them realizing that Darth Vader was even now organizing search parties to locate these anomalies. The Justice League's trial by fire had begun, and survival would require adaptation, cunning, and a willingness to fight in ways they'd never had to before. Superman's first week on Dantooine taught him humility. The planet's twin suns should have empowered him, but their unfamiliar radiation spectrum left him in a constant state of adjustment. He'd found shelter in the wreckage of an old moisture farm, abandoned decades ago by settlers who'd given up on the desert's cruelty. Each day, his powers stabilized a little more. Each night, he stared at stars he didn't recognize and wondered if his team had survived. Cad Bane hadn't given up. The bounty hunter was patient, methodical, and utterly mercenary. He'd put the word out through underworld channels: unusual humanoid, can fly, shoots energy from eyes, incredibly strong. Within days, Imperial intelligence had flagged the report. Within a week, a star destroyer had entered Dantooine's orbit. Superman watched from a canyon ridge as Imperial troop transports descended on Mos Eisley. Stormtroopers fanned out through the spaceport, questioning locals, offering credits for information. He'd stayed hidden, observing, learning. These soldiers served an empire, that much was clear from their behavior. They moved with the casual arrogance of occupiers, not protectors. He'd also encountered the rebellion, though he didn't know the term yet. A group of smugglers had been cornered by stormtroopers near his shelter. Superman had intervened, not revealing his full capabilities, but enough to scatter the Imperial patrol. The smugglers had stared at him in shock before their leader, a Twi'lek woman named Hera, had asked the question that would change everything: "Who are you working for?" "No one," Superman had answered honestly. "I just don't like bullies." Hera had studied him with sharp eyes. "The Empire are more than bullies, stranger. They're tyrants who've enslaved half the galaxy. If you're not with them, you're against them. There's no middle ground anymore." Now, hiding in the desert as Imperial forces systematically searched every settlement, Superman faced his first real decision in this new galaxy. He could continue hiding, conserving his strength until he fully recovered. Or he could act, reveal himself, and potentially draw attention he wasn't ready for. The choice was made for him when he spotted a transport full of civilian prisoners, aliens and humans chained together, being loaded onto an Imperial shuttle. His superhearing caught their whispered conversations: families separated, fathers taken for questioning because they'd been seen near suspected rebel sympathizers, children crying for parents who'd already been executed. Clark Kent had spent his entire life protecting the innocent. That didn't change just because he was in a different galaxy. He flew, still not at full speed, but fast enough, and landed between the shuttle and the prisoner transport. Stormtroopers immediately opened fire. Superman's cape swirled as blaster bolts ricocheted harmlessly off his chest. His heat vision carved through their weapons with surgical precision, leaving them armed with molten slag instead of functional blasters. "Let them go," Superman said, his voice carrying across the landing pad with unmistakable authority. The Imperial officer in charge, a thin man with cruel eyes, sneered. "You have no jurisdiction here. The Empire is the law. Interfere further and you'll be charged with treason against." Superman moved faster than the officer could track, appearing directly in front of him. "I said, let them go." The officer's courage evaporated when confronted with Superman's unwavering gaze. He signaled to his troops. The prisoners were released, stumbling away in confused freedom. Superman maintained his position until every civilian had fled, then he rose into the sky, leaving the stunned Imperials staring after him. He'd just announced his presence to the entire Empire. There was no going back now. Wonder Woman's situation on Naboo had escalated differently. After her initial encounter with stormtroopers, she'd retreated to the wilderness, observing the planet's political situation. Naboo was under Imperial protection, a term she quickly understood meant occupation disguised as security. The local resistance had found her first. A group of young fighters, remnants of Naboo's defense forces, had been monitoring Imperial activity when they'd witnessed her deflecting blaster fire. Their leader, a human woman named Sabe, had approached carefully, hands empty of weapons. "You fought the Empire and survived," Sabe had said. "That makes you either very lucky or very dangerous. Which is it?" Diana had lowered her sword. I am Diana of Themyscira. In my world, I am called Wonder Woman. And I have fought tyrants before. The resistance had taken her to their hidden base, a network of caves beneath Naboo's rolling hills. There, she'd learned about the Galactic Empire's rise, the fall of the Republic, the near extinction of the Jedi. She'd listened to stories of oppression, of families torn apart, of entire worlds enslaved or destroyed for daring to resist. It reminded her of every dictator she'd ever fought. The names and technologies were different, but the underlying evil was the same. We're planning an operation, Sabe had explained, showing Diana a holographic map of Theed's capital district. The Empire is transporting prisoners, political dissidents, former Republic senators, anyone who spoke against them, to an interrogation facility. We're going to intercept the transport, free the prisoners. It's risky. Most of us probably won't survive. But we have to try. Diana had studied the map, her tactical mind already identifying weaknesses in the Imperial security. You'll need someone who can handle their heavy weapons. Someone who can draw fire while your people extract the prisoners. Are you volunteering? Sabe had asked, hope and skepticism warring in her expression. I am an Amazon, Diana had replied. We do not stand by while innocents suffer. Its leadership's arrogance made them predictable. He'd made contact with the Coruscant Underground, a network of smugglers, information brokers, and criminals who operated in the Empire's blind spots. They'd been suspicious at first, but Batman had proven his value by providing intelligence about Imperial patrol routes and security weaknesses that even they hadn't known. One of his contacts, an information broker named Cleve, had been particularly useful. You're not from the Outer Rim, the alien had observed, studying Batman's armor with professional interest. That's not Imperial tech, not Rebel tech, not anything I recognize. Where exactly are you from? Somewhere the Empire hasn't reached yet, Batman had answered. And I'm looking for others like me. 6 people, probably scattered across the galaxy. Unusual capabilities. Would have made a lot of noise when they arrived. Cleve had nodded slowly. There have been reports. Strange things happening on different worlds. The Empire's been investigating, but their information control is tight. I can ask around, but intelligence that's specific doesn't come cheap. Batman had produced a small device from his utility belt, a miniaturized EMP generator, compact enough to fit in a palm but powerful enough to disable a city block's electronics. Would this suffice as payment? The broker's eyes had widened. What is that? Leverage, Batman had said. And if you help me find my team, I have more where that came from. Flash had spent his first week on Corellia trying not to panic about his diminishing connection to the Speed Force. Each day, his top speed decreased slightly. Each day, the cosmic energy that had defined his powers since the accident felt more distant. He was still faster than any normal human, could still vibrate through solid matter, could still process information at superhuman speeds. But he wasn't the Flash anymore, he was becoming something less. The scientific facilities on Corellia had given him an idea. If the Speed Force connection was weakening, maybe he could understand why. Maybe he could adapt, find a way to tap into whatever energy sources this galaxy used. He'd broken into a Surasisi research laboratory, not difficult when you could move faster than security cameras could track, and accessed their database on hyperspace physics. What he'd found had been both fascinating and terrifying. Hyperspace travel worked by accessing an alternate dimension where the laws of physics operated differently. Ships entered hyperspace through specialized engines, traveled at faster-than-light speeds, then re-emerged in normal space. It was conceptually similar to how he accessed the Speed Force, but the underlying mechanics were completely different. An idea had formed. If he could modify his approach, maybe he could tap into hyperspace energy the same way he tapped into the Speed Force. It would require experimentation, possibly dangerous experimentation, but staying at diminishing power wasn't an option. His experiments had attracted attention. Surasisi officers had tracked unusual energy signatures to the laboratory. Flash had been forced to run, leading them on a chase through Corellia's industrial districts. Even at reduced speed, he'd been too fast for them to catch, but the encounter had confirmed his fears. He couldn't hide forever. Eventually, someone would corner him when he was too weak to escape. He needed to find the others. The Justice League had always been stronger together. Green Lantern's week on Mandalore had been an education in warrior culture and political complexity. The Mandalorians who'd intercepted him had been initially hostile, but when Hal had demonstrated his ring's capabilities, creating complex constructs with nothing but willpower, their attitude had shifted to grudging respect. "You fight with light," their leader, a warrior named Fen Rao, had observed. "No weapon to be taken. No armor to be pierced. Only will made manifest. There's honor in that." Hal had been given conditional freedom within their settlement, though he was clearly under constant observation. He'd learned that Mandalore had its own complicated relationship with the Empire, technically Imperial allies, but with significant autonomy and a culture that valued personal freedom above all else. Many Mandalorians chafed under even nominal Imperial oversight. His ring's charge had dropped to 76%. Every construct burned through precious energy he couldn't replace. Hal had begun rationing his power usage, relying on diplomacy and physical capabilities instead of creating green energy solutions to every problem. "You're worried about your weapon," Fen Rao had observed during a training session where Hal had been learning Mandalorian combat techniques. "A warrior who depends entirely on one tool is vulnerable. Learn to fight without it, and you'll be stronger when you have it." The advice had resonated. Hal Jordan had been a fighter pilot before he'd been a Green Lantern. He'd survived on skill and instinct long before a ring had chosen him. Maybe it was time to remember those lessons. But the tactical situation had shifted dramatically when an Imperial delegation had arrived on Mandalore, led by an Inquisitor, a Force user in black armor who served the Empire's interests. The Inquisitor had been searching for anomalies, and his interest in Hal had been immediate and intense. "You radiate something," the Inquisitor had said, his red-bladed lightsaber ignited. "Not the Force, but something similar. The Emperor wants all such anomalies investigated. You will come with me for questioning." Hal's ring had flared to life instinctively, creating a barrier between himself and the Inquisitor. "I don't think so." The resulting confrontation had lit up Mandalore's sky with green energy and red plasma. Hal had fought defensively, trying to conserve power while keeping the Inquisitor at bay. The Force user had been skilled, using telekinesis to throw debris and lightning to attack from multiple angles. But Hal's constructs had proven versatile enough to counter most attacks. The fight had ended when Fen Rao and his warriors had intervened, their weapons trained on the Inquisitor. "This one is under Mandalorian protection," Rao had declared. "The Empire's jurisdiction ends where our honor begins." The Inquisitor had retreated, but not before promising, "The Empire does not forget. We will return." Hal's ring charge, 71%. And now he had Imperial attention he couldn't afford. Aquaman had spent his week on Mon Cala learning the depths of Imperial oppression. The Mon Calamari and Quarren, the planet's two dominant aquatic species, lived under brutal occupation. Their shipyards, among the finest in the galaxy, had been seized to build Imperial warships. Those who resisted faced execution. Families were held hostage to ensure compliance. Arthur had moved through the underwater cities like a ghost, his Atlantean abilities making him nearly invisible to the occupiers. He'd watched Imperial officers abuse civilians. He'd seen children separated from parents for re-education. He'd witnessed summary executions of workers who'd failed to meet production quotas. The King of Atlantis had seen enough. He'd made contact with the Mon Calamari Resistance, an underground network preparing for eventual uprising. Their leader, a veteran warrior named Akbar, had been skeptical at first. "Another surface dweller promising to save us," Akbar had said, his large eyes studying Arthur with weary cynicism. "We've heard those promises before. They always end with us bleeding while the surface world forgets." "I'm not a surface dweller," Arthur had replied. "I'm from Atlantis. And I know what it means to be a king watching his people suffer under occupation. I'm not here to save you, I'm here to help you save yourselves." He'd proven his worth in the depths, using his ability to communicate with sea life to establish reconnaissance networks the Empire couldn't detect. He'd trained resistance fighters in underwater combat techniques the Imperial forces weren't equipped to counter. And when an Imperial transport had dumped toxic waste into the breeding grounds, Arthur had personally ensured every barrel was returned, delivered directly to the Star Destroyer's hangar bay at high velocity. The Empire had noticed. Admiral Mahdi, commanding the occupation fleet, had demanded an investigation into the aquatic insurgent disrupting Imperial operations. Bounties had been posted. Specialized underwater troops had been deployed. But Arthur kept fighting. Because that's what kings did. They protected their people, even when those people came from an entirely different galaxy. Cyborg had spent his first week on Scarif embedded in Imperial computer networks, and what he discovered had horrified him. The Death Star Project. Alderaan's destruction, a recent event that had killed billions. The systematic oppression of entire species. Orders for mass executions, detention without trial, torture protocols. Victor Stone had seen evil before, but this was industrialized tyranny on a scale that defied comprehension. He'd also discovered something crucial: the Empire was actively searching for dimensional anomalies. Reports had been filed from Dantooine, Naboo, Coruscant, Corellia, Mandalore, and Mon Cala, each describing individuals with abilities that defied normal explanation. The descriptions were vague, but Cyborg recognized them immediately. His team was alive. Scattered, but alive. He'd begun compiling coordinates, plotting locations, and planning extraction routes. But getting off Scarif without attracting terminal attention would require careful timing. The facility he'd infiltrated was a high-security Imperial installation. And security had tightened significantly after his initial breach. Victor had made his decision. He would extract himself, establish communication channels with the rebellion. They needed what he knew about the Empire's internal systems, and then focus everything on reuniting the Justice League. But first, he needed to survive the next 5 minutes. Because alarms were blaring, blast doors were sealing, and somewhere in the facility, Darth Vader had just arrived to personally investigate the security breach. 7 heroes, each making choices that would define their role in this galaxy's conflicts. Each drawing attention from forces they didn't fully understand. Each moving inexorably toward a confrontation with an empire that had never faced anything like them. The scattered Justice League was about to learn that in the Star Wars galaxy, there was no such thing as neutrality. The Emperor wanted them. The rebellion needed them. And Darth Vader was coming. Darth Vader's fortress ship, the Executor, hung in orbit above Scarif like a dagger pointed at the planet's heart. The Dark Lord stood in the command center, his breathing apparatus the only sound as technicians worked in terrified silence around him. On the holographic display before him, 7 incident reports glowed with red priority markers. Dantooine, humanoid male, flight capability, energy projection from eyes, extreme durability. Naboo, female warrior, deflects blaster fire, superhuman strength, carries ancient weapons. Coruscant, armored figure operating in lower levels, advanced technology, exceptional combat skills. Corellia, individual moving at speeds exceeding sensor tracking, energy signature unlike anything catalogued. Mandalore, male wielding green energy constructs, technology inconsistent with known civilizations. Mon Cala, aquatic humanoid, communicates with sea life, superhuman underwater capabilities. Scarif, cybernetic entity infiltrating Imperial networks, technology incorporating unknown synthetic intelligence. 7 anomalies, Vader said, his mechanical voice carrying across the bridge. All appearing within the same standard week. All possessing capabilities beyond conventional explanation. This is not coincidence. Grand Admiral Titus, the Executor's commanding officer, stood rigidly at attention. Lord Vader, our analysts believe these could be Force-sensitive individuals who survived Order 66. Perhaps they've been in hiding, training in secret. No. Vader's contradiction was absolute. I have hunted every surviving Jedi for years. I know their presence in the Force. These beings are different. They register as disturbances, not signatures. As if the Force itself does not know what to make of them. He turned from the display, his cape sweeping dramatically. The Emperor believes they represent either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be exploited. I will determine which. His gloved hand clenched into a fist. Prepare assault teams for each location. I will personally investigate the Scarif anomaly. It has been foolish enough to penetrate an Imperial facility. It will serve as an example to the others. As you command, Lord Vader, Titus said, already signaling his subordinates. Vader strode toward the hangar bay, his mind calculating tactical approaches. He had fought Jedi Masters, ancient Sith, and beings of considerable power. But something about these anomalies unsettled him. They appeared from nowhere, operated with capabilities the Force should have revealed to him, and seemed entirely ignorant of basic galactic norms. Either they were the greatest actors in the galaxy, or they were exactly what they appeared to be, something from outside his experience entirely. He would enjoy discovering the truth. In Scarif Sublevel 17, Cyborg pressed himself against a wall as stormtroopers rushed past his position. His camouflage systems, designed to blend with human environments, were struggling with the facility's exotic materials, but they held long enough for the patrol to pass. Victor's internal systems screamed warnings. High-level Force signature detected. Probability, Darth Vader. Recommended action, immediate evacuation. Yeah, thanks, Victor muttered. Real helpful. He'd been trying to reach the facility's vehicle hangar for the past hour, but Imperial security had locked down every access point. His mother box technology gave him incredible advantages in computer infiltration, but physical barriers still stopped him. And he was detecting weapon systems activating throughout the facility, automated turrets, ray shields, blast doors thick enough to withstand orbital bombardment. They were sealing him in. A new presence entered his sensor range, and every combat alert in his system activated simultaneously. The Force signature was overwhelming, like standing next to a black hole. Darth Vader had entered the sublevel. Cyborg's armed cannon charged reflexively. He'd seen enough Imperial data to know who, and what, Vader was. Former Jedi. Sith Lord. The Emperor's enforcer. A being who'd killed thousands, possibly millions, in service to tyranny. Cybernetic anomaly, Vader's voice echoed through the corridor, amplified by his respirator and the empty spaces. You have violated Imperial security. Surrender and your termination will be swift. Victor didn't waste breath on response. He fired, a concentrated plasma bolt designed to penetrate military-grade armor. The shot was perfect, aimed at the center of Vader's chest plate. The Sith Lord's lightsaber ignited with a snap hiss, the crimson blade intercepting the plasma bolt and deflecting it into the wall. Vader didn't break stride. Impressive technology, Vader observed, his tone almost curious. But you are not a droid. You are partially organic. A fusion of flesh and machine unlike anything in Imperial records. He raised his hand, and Cyborg felt invisible pressure seize his body. The Emperor will be most interested in your construction. The Force grip should have immobilized him completely. Instead, Cyborg's mother box technology flooded his systems with counter-resonance frequencies, disrupting the telekinetic hold just enough for him to move. He launched himself sideways, his jets firing, and put a support column between himself and Vader. Not interested in meeting your boss, Cyborg said, interfacing with the facility's systems. Emergency fire suppression activated throughout the sublevel, filling the corridor with flame-retardant foam that obscured vision and sensor readings. He ran, his enhanced strength letting him tear through security doors. Behind him, he heard the distinctive sound of a lightsaber cutting through metal. Vader wasn't slowed by mere barriers. Victor's tactical computer calculated escape probabilities, 12% and dropping. He needed a miracle. He got something better, a transmission on an encrypted frequency his systems barely detected. Rebel Alliance authentication codes, followed by a simple message, Scarif anomaly, if you're listening, we have a ship in the southern quadrant. Transmitting coordinates. Get there in 10 minutes or we leave without you. Cyborg grinned despite the situation. Rebels. Gotta love the timing. He burst through the final door into Scarif's tropical exterior, the planet's famous beaches stretching before him. A modified blockade runner was descending rapidly toward coordinates half a kilometer away. Cyborg's jets fired at maximum thrust, carrying him across the sand in desperate flight. Behind him, Vader emerged from the facility, his lightsaber raised. The Dark Lord's hand extended, and lightning, actual force lightning, arced across the distance. The electrical attack should have been devastating to Cyborg's systems. Instead, his mother box technology absorbed the energy and channeled it into his power reserves. Victor felt his systems surge with borrowed power, accelerating him faster than his jets alone could manage. He reached the ship as its boarding ramp descended. Rebel soldiers pulled him aboard, and the blockade runner was already rising before the ramp fully closed. TIE fighters screamed after them, but the rebel pilot executed a series of evasive maneuvers that would have made Han Solo jealous. As they broke atmosphere, Cyborg looked through the viewport to see Vader standing on the beach below, a dark figure against white sand, watching them escape. That, Victor said to the rebel captain, was way too close. The captain, a grizzled human named Cassian Ander, studied him with tactical assessment. You just infiltrated an Imperial facility, survived an encounter with Darth Vader, and somehow absorbed force lightning like it was nothing. What are you? Grateful, Cyborg said. And very interested in talking to whoever sent you to extract me. On Dantooine, Superman's rescue of Imperial prisoners had triggered exactly the response he'd expected, overwhelming retaliation. 3 Star destroyers now hung in orbit, and the planet's surface was crawling with thousands of stormtroopers conducting systematic sweeps. Clark had gone to ground in the deep desert, using his powers sparingly to avoid detection. His adaptation to the twin suns was progressing. He estimated he was at 90% capacity now, but he was still cautious about revealing his full capabilities. The decision was taken from his hands when a rebel cell attempting to evacuate refugees came under heavy Imperial attack near Beggar's Canyon. Superman's superhearing caught the sounds of battle from kilometers away, blaster fire, explosions, and screams. He was moving before conscious thought caught up with instinct. The Imperial force had the rebels pinned down in the canyon, AT-STS advancing while TIE fighters strafed from above. The rebel position was collapsing, civilians caught in the crossfire. Superman descended from the sky like judgment itself. The first AT-ST walker went down when he simply pushed it over, his strength sufficient to topple the 20-ton machine like a child's toy. Blaster fire from stormtroopers washed over him harmlessly. His heat vision carved through the second walker's cockpit with surgical precision, not killing the pilots, but disabling their controls and forcing evacuation. A TIE fighter dove at him, cannons blazing. Superman caught it, actually caught the fighter in mid-flight, and set it down gently away from the battle zone. The pilot stared through his cockpit canopy in absolute shock before Superman crushed the fighter's weapons and engines with his bare hands. Tell your commanders, Superman said, his voice carrying even through the sealed cockpit, that these people are under my protection now. The remaining Imperial forces retreated in disorder. Superman helped the rebels evacuate the civilians to their hidden transport, then lingered to ensure they escaped safely. Hera, the Twi'lek rebel he'd met before, approached him with something like awe. You just took on an entire Imperial assault force alone. Who are you? Someone who believes in protecting the innocent, Superman answered. Your rebellion, you're fighting the Empire. We're trying to restore freedom to the galaxy, Hera said. The Empire has taken everything, our governments, our rights, our hope. We fight because someone has to. She studied him carefully. We could use someone with your abilities. The Rebel Alliance would welcome you. Superman looked at the evacuating civilians, families who would live because he'd intervened, children who wouldn't grow up under Imperial oppression. This wasn't his galaxy, wasn't his fight. But tyranny was tyranny, and he'd never walked away from people who needed help. I'm looking for 6 others like me, he said. We were separated when we arrived in your galaxy. If your alliance can help me find them, I'll help you fight the Empire. Hera smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen in this harsh galaxy. I think we can arrange that. Welcome to the rebellion, what do we call you? Clark thought of the symbol on his chest, the House of El crest that Earth had interpreted as an S. Superman, he said. Call me Superman. On Naboo, Wonder Woman stood before a holographic communication array, facing the scattered leadership of the Rebel Alliance. Mon Mothma's projection regarded her with cautious hope, while General Riken displayed military skepticism, and Bail Organa showed diplomatic interest. You've been operating on Naboo for 6 days, Mon Mothma said. In that time, you've freed over 200 political prisoners, destroyed 4 Imperial installations, and defeated an Inquisitor in single combat. Yet we have no record of you before last week. No homeworld registration. No military service history, no identification whatsoever. Diana stood tall, her armor bearing the scars of recent battles but her bearing regal. I am Diana, Princess of Themyscira and Warrior of the Amazons. I come from beyond your galaxy, brought here by forces I do not fully understand. In my world, I am called Wonder Woman, and I have spent decades fighting those who would oppress the innocent. The rebel leaders exchanged glances. General Riken spoke first, beyond our galaxy. That's impossible. Hyperspace travel doesn't work that way. Yet here I stand, Diana replied simply. I did not choose to come to your galaxy, but I am here. And having seen the Empire's cruelty firsthand, I cannot stand idle. I am a warrior, but I am also a protector. If your rebellion fights for freedom and justice, then our goals align. Bail Organa leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. You mentioned 6 others. Are they like you? Each possesses unique abilities, Diana confirmed. If they survived our arrival, they are scattered across your galaxy. I wish to find them, to reunite my team. But I will not ignore suffering while I search. So I propose an exchange. I will fight alongside your rebellion, lend my strength to your cause. In return, help me locate my companions. Mon Mothma considered this. Your abilities would be invaluable. But understand, the Empire will hunt you relentlessly once they fully understand what you are. You'll become a target. Diana's smile was fierce. I have been a target of tyrants before. It did not end well for them. Then welcome to the Alliance, Wonder Woman, Mon Mothma said. We'll begin searching for your companions immediately. And in the meantime, there's an Imperial weapons facility on Lothal that's been coordinating attacks on civilian populations. We've been planning an assault, but it's heavily defended. With your capabilities, success becomes possible. Send me the coordinates, Diana said. The Empire will learn that some warriors cannot be broken by fear or force. They will learn what it means to face an Amazon. On Coruscant, Batman had finally made contact with a rebel cell operating in the planet's lower levels. The meeting was tense, the rebels were understandably paranoid about Imperial infiltration, and Batman's refusal to reveal his face hadn't helped. But the intelligence he'd provided had proven invaluable. Surveillance routes. Security weaknesses. Information about upcoming Imperial operations gleaned from hacked communications. Batman had demonstrated his value before requesting anything in return. Now he sat across from Saw Gerrera, the rebel extremist whose methods made even the Alliance leadership uncomfortable. You want us to help you find 6 people scattered across the galaxy, Saw said, his voice rough from injuries sustained in decades of fighting. People you claim have abilities that defy explanation. Why should I believe this isn't an elaborate Imperial trap? Batman produced a small holographic projector from his utility belt. The image that appeared showed all 7 members of the Justice League in their prime: Superman flying, Flash running, Wonder Woman in combat, Green Lantern creating constructs, Aquaman commanding sea life, Cyborg interfacing with technology, and Batman himself analyzing data. "This is my team," Batman said. "We were fighting an enemy on our world when something went wrong. We were pulled through dimensional barriers and scattered here. I've been monitoring Imperial communications. There have been reports matching my teammates' capabilities on Dantooine, Naboo, Corellia, Mandalore, Mon Cala, and Scarif. They're alive. And when we're reunited, we'll be the most effective fighting force this galaxy has ever seen." Saw studied the hologram with grudging interest. "If what you're showing me is real, you're talking about beings who could change the entire war. But that kind of power." He paused. "Power like that makes people dangerous. How do I know you won't just replace the Empire with your own tyranny?" "Because we've had the power to do that on our own world for years," Batman answered. "And we chose to protect instead of rule. We're not conquerors. We're defenders. Help me find my team, and you'll have 7 allies who've spent their lives fighting for justice." Saw was silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "I'll put out feelers through my network. If your people are making noise, someone will have heard about it. But understand, I'm taking a risk on you. If this turns out to be a trap, I'll make sure you regret it." "Fair enough," Batman said, standing. "One more thing. I need access to your technical facilities. I'm going to build something that will help us coordinate once we're reunited." "What kind of something?" Batman's expression, though hidden behind his cowl, conveyed grim determination. "Something the Empire won't see coming. 7 heroes, each taking their first steps toward alliance with the rebellion. Each demonstrating that even in a galaxy far, far away, there were those who would stand against tyranny regardless of personal cost. Each drawing closer to reunification. And in the Emperor's throne room on Coruscant, Palpatine felt the shifting currents of the Force with cold satisfaction. These anomalies were more than they appeared. They were powerful, principled, and, most importantly, predictable in their heroism. "Let them join the rebellion," the Emperor said to the empty chamber. "Let them believe they are making a difference. And when they have fully revealed themselves, when they are committed to this futile resistance, then we will show them the true meaning of power." The trap was being set. The scattered Justice League, in their determination to help, was walking directly into it. The rebel briefing room on Yavin 4 hummed with tension. Mon Mothma stood at the head of the holographic table, her expression grave as she addressed the assembled cell leaders and field commanders. Among them stood Superman, recently arrived after Hera's evacuation team had brought him from Dantooine. Wonder Woman had arrived hours before, transported from Naboo by a rebel frigate. Both heroes stood slightly apart from the others, still strangers in this galaxy despite their growing involvement. "We've lost contact with the Scarif extraction team," Mon Mothma announced. Last transmission indicated they'd successfully recovered the anomaly, the cybernetic individual, but Imperial forces intercepted them at the Horus system. "We don't know if they survived." Superman's jaw tightened. Cybernetic individual. Advanced technology integrated with organic tissue? "The reports suggest so," General Rekin confirmed. "Why? Do you know this person?" "Victor Stone. Cyborg. He's one of my teammates," Superman said. "If your people rescued him from Scarif, they saved one of the most technologically advanced beings from our world. Is there any way to track their ship?" "We're trying," a rebel technician said, his fingers dancing across a console. "But if they went to ground to avoid Imperial pursuit, they could be anywhere in a dozen systems." Wonder Woman stepped forward, her presence commanding immediate attention. "You mentioned other anomalies in your earlier briefing. Dantooine and Scarif we understand now. What of the others? Mon Mothma gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show 5 additional locations with incident reports attached. Corellia, an individual moving at superhuman speeds, currently evading CC and Imperial intelligence. Mandalore, a being wielding energy constructs, now under Mandalorian protection but drawing Imperial attention. Mon Kala, an aquatic humanoid who's become involved with the local resistance. And Coruscant, an armored figure operating in the lower levels who's been providing intelligence to certain, less official rebel elements. Superman and Wonder Woman exchanged glances. Clark spoke first. The speed user is Barry Allen, the Flash. The energy constructs sound like Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. The aquatic description matches Arthur Curry, Aquaman. And the armored figure on Coruscant. He smiled slightly. That's Bruce Wayne. Batman. If he's providing intelligence, you can trust it's accurate. So that accounts for 6 of you, Mon Mothma said. You mentioned 7. Victor, Cyborg, makes 7, Diana confirmed. If your extraction team has him, then we've located all of our companions. Now we need to reunite them. That's easier said than done, General Riken interjected. The Empire is actively hunting these anomalies. Darth Vader himself investigated Scarif. Imperial Star Destroyers are positioned at 4 of the 6 locations. Any attempt to extract your teammates will draw overwhelming force. Batman's voice crackled through the briefing room speakers, startling everyone except Superman and Wonder Woman. The Dark Knight had somehow patched into the rebel communication network without anyone detecting his infiltration. Then we don't extract them individually. We establish a secure rendezvous point, provide coordinates to each team member, and converge simultaneously. The Empire can't intercept all of us if we move at once from different directions. Security officers immediately began scanning for the intrusion point, but Batman continued speaking. I've been monitoring your network for the past 3 hours. Your encryption is adequate but not unbreakable. I suggest you upgrade to a multi-phase rotation cipher. I'm transmitting the specifications now. Consider it a down payment on our alliance. Mon Mothma's expression flickered between irritation and grudging respect. You infiltrated our most secure facility without anyone noticing. Should we be concerned about Imperial capabilities to do the same? The Empire relies on brute force over subtlety, Batman replied. Their intelligence apparatus is large but inefficient. I've already identified 17 security vulnerabilities in your Yavin base protocols. I'll have recommendations ready within the hour. But first, rendezvous coordinates. I suggest Dantooine. The old rebel base there is abandoned, off major hyperspace routes, and has sufficient infrastructure to support our needs. Superman nodded in agreement. Once we're together, we can coordinate properly. Figure out our next move. Your next move should be helping us destroy the Empire, Saw Gerrera's voice interjected, the extremist rebel having arrived during the briefing. You've got powers that could take down Star Destroyers, infiltrate Imperial facilities, liberate entire planets. We should be planning offensives, not family reunions. We fight more effectively as a unit, Wonder Woman said, her tone brooking no argument. Scattered, we are powerful individuals. Together, we are the Justice League. Give us time to reunite, and we will be far more valuable to your rebellion. Mon Mothma considered this, then nodded. Very well. We'll coordinate the rendezvous at Dantooine. But understand, the Empire will notice when multiple anomalies disappear from their surveillance. Vader will anticipate the meeting point. You'll be walking into a trap. Batman's voice carried a hint of dark amusement. Good. Let him come. It's time the Empire learned what happens when they corner us. On Corellia, the Flash raced through industrial corridors with diminishing confidence. His speed-force connection had degraded to approximately 65% of normal capacity, and every day brought further reduction. He'd been experimenting with tapping into hyperspace energy, but the attempts had been dangerous and largely unsuccessful. Worse, Sur-SEC had adapted their tactics. They'd stopped trying to catch him directly and instead began predicting his movements, setting traps at locations he'd need to visit, food supplies, water sources, technical facilities where he'd been attempting his experiments. Barry was fast, but he still needed to eat, drink, and rest. The transmission from Batman reached him through a stolen comlink he'd been using to monitor Imperial channels. The Dark Knight's message was encrypted but unmistakable to anyone who knew Bruce Wayne's analytical patterns, coordinates, timeframe, and a simple directive: come home. Barry felt relief wash over him. He wasn't alone anymore. The Justice League was reuniting. But first, he needed to escape Corellia without leading the entire Imperial Navy to Dantooine. He'd spent days studying the planet's starport security, identifying vulnerabilities and timing patrol rotations. Now, with a specific deadline, he put that knowledge to use. A cargo hauler was scheduled to depart for the Outer Rim in 30 minutes. If he could get aboard without triggering alarms, he could ride it out of the system. Flash moved through the starport at controlled speed, vibrating his molecules to phase through security checkpoints. His reduced speed force connection made the technique exhausting in ways it had never been before, but he managed. He slipped aboard the hauler just as its cargo bay sealed, hiding among sealed containers that would mask his presence from most sensors. As the ship broke atmosphere, Barry allowed himself a moment of exhaustion. Soon, he'd be with his team again. Soon, they'd face this galaxy's challenges together. Soon, but not yet. And every hour until reunification felt like an eternity. On Mandalore, Green Lantern stood before the assembled clan leaders in the Great Hall of Sindari. Fen Rao had vouched for him, but the Mandalorian leadership remained divided about offering continued protection to someone who'd drawn Imperial attention. The Empire has demanded we surrender this outsider, clan leader Ursa Wren said, her armor bearing the marks of countless battles. They've threatened to revoke our autonomy if we refuse. One stranger is not worth risking everything our people have fought to preserve. We gave him our protection, Fen Rao countered. To surrender him now would be dishonorable. Mandalorians do not break their word. Hal stood silent, letting them debate. His ring showed 68% charge, dangerously low for someone cut off from recharging capabilities. He'd been rationing power usage carefully, relying more on his pilot training and physical capabilities than ring constructs. But if the Mandalorians withdrew their protection, he'd need every bit of remaining energy just to escape. The decision was made for them when Imperial Star Destroyers appeared in orbit, accompanied by Darth Vader's personal flagship. The Dark Lord transmitted a simple message: surrender the anomaly within 1 hour, or Mandalore will be classified as an open rebellion against the Empire. Ursa Wren's expression hardened. They dare threaten us in our own system. The Empire fears what they don't understand, Hal said quietly. And they're right to fear. Because I'm not staying here to let your people suffer for protecting me. He held up his hand, ring glowing. But I need one thing, a ship. Fast, hyperspace capable, and with enough fuel to reach the Outer Rim. You'll never make it past the blockade, another clan leader objected. Watch me, Hal said with pilot's confidence. I've flown against worse odds than a few Star Destroyers. Fen Rao smiled grimly. If you're going out fighting, you'll do it in a proper ship. I'll give you my personal fighter, a Fong-class starfighter. Best combat craft Mandalore ever produced. 20 minutes later, Hal Jordan sat in the cockpit of the Fong fighter. Its controls unfamiliar but comprehensible to someone who'd flown everything from F-16s to own battlecruisers. His ring created a HUD overlay that translated Mandalorian systems into formats he understood. This is Green Lantern to Mandalorian control, he transmitted. I'm launching. Get everyone to shelters, this is about to get loud. The fighter screamed from the hangar at full thrust, immediately drawing fire from TIE interceptors. Hal's ring supplemented the ship's shields while his pilot instincts took over. He'd been flying combat missions since before he got the ring. This was familiar territory despite the alien technology. He dodged turbolaser fire from a star destroyer, threading through its superstructure and emerging on the far side before Imperial gunners could track him. TIE fighters pursued, but Mandalorian craft were built for dogfighting. Hal executed a barrel roll that would have killed a normal pilot from G-forces, using his ring to create a brief energy shield that deflected incoming fire. The Fong fighter's hyperdrive engaged just as he cleared Mandalore's gravity well, and the stars stretched into the familiar lines of faster-than-light travel. Hal set course for Dantooine and allowed himself to relax slightly. Ring charge, 63%. Still enough to fight if he had to. And based on Batman's message, he'd definitely have to fight. On Mon Cala, Aquaman stood in the underwater command center of the Resistance, studying holographic displays showing Imperial fleet positions. Akbar stood beside him, the Mon Calamari commander having become Arthur's closest ally during his time in this galaxy. "The shipyards are nearly ready," Akbar said, gesturing to hidden construction facilities where Mon Calamari engineers were building warships in secret. "Another month and we'll have a fleet capable of challenging Imperial control. But if we move too soon, the Empire will destroy everything we've built." Arthur studied the tactical situation with a king's strategic eye. Batman's message said 3 days until rendezvous. "If I leave now, the Empire might accelerate their crackdown before your fleet is ready." "Then stay," Akbar said. "Your team will understand." They would, Arthur agreed. "But we're more effective together. And once we're reunited, we can help you liberate Mon Cala properly, with the full strength of the Justice League." He'd made his decision. Arthur Curry was a king, but he was also a member of a team. His people needed him, but so did his teammates. The balance was delicate, and the choice was painful. "I'll leave detailed tactical recommendations," Arthur said. "Everything I've learned about Imperial patterns, weaknesses, and response protocols. Train your people in the underwater combat techniques I've taught you. And when your fleet is ready, send word to the Rebel Alliance. I promise you, the Justice League will be there to support your liberation." Akbar clasped Arthur's shoulder in the Mon Calamari gesture of respect between warriors. "You've given us hope, Surface Walker. That's worth more than another month of your presence. Go to your team. Win your war. And when Mon Cala rises against the Empire, we'll know we have friends among the stars." Arthur departed hours later in a stolen Imperial transport, its identification codes altered by Mon Calamari slicers to show routine cargo status. He slipped through the blockade by traveling underwater to a remote launch facility, then piloting straight up through an atmospheric blind spot in Imperial sensor coverage. As he entered hyperspace toward Dantooine, Arthur reflected on the strange path that had brought him here. He'd been king of Atlantis, protector of Earth's oceans. Now he was helping aquatic aliens in another galaxy fight for their freedom. Some responsibilities, it seemed, transcended dimensions. Back on Yavin 4, Superman and Wonder Woman prepared for departure to Dantooine. The Rebel Alliance had provided them with a transport and a small security detail, though both heroes suspected they'd be protecting the rebels rather than the other way around. "We're walking into a trap," Diana observed, checking her equipment with practiced efficiency. "Vader will be waiting." "I know," Clark said. "But we don't have a choice. We need the team together." "Agreed." Diana smiled fiercely. "And perhaps it's time this Darth Vader learned what happens when he faces warriors who've battled gods. He's more dangerous than you think," Superman cautioned, remembering their previous encounter. "The Force gives him capabilities that are hard to counter. He adapted to my fighting style faster than almost anyone I've ever faced." "Then we'll adapt faster," Diana replied. "That's what we do, Clark. We face impossible odds and find a way to win." Their transport lifted from Yavin 4's jungle moon, joining a small convoy of rebel ships heading in different directions, misdirection to confuse Imperial tracking. Superman and Wonder Woman's vessel would arrive at Dantooine in approximately 18 hours. In that time, 6 other members of the Justice League would converge on the same destination from across the galaxy. And Darth Vader, monitoring Imperial intelligence reports, would prepare an ambush that he believed would finally capture or eliminate these troublesome anomalies. Both sides were confident in their strategies. Both sides understood the stakes. And both sides were about to discover that this confrontation would reshape galactic history in ways neither could anticipate. The scattered Justice League was coming home. And when they stood together again, the Star Wars galaxy would learn what Earth's finest could accomplish when united by purpose and unbreakable bonds of friendship. Cyborg regained consciousness in the cockpit of a rebel transport, his system still processing the chaos of the Scarif extraction. The ship was in hyperspace, the swirling blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel visible through the viewport. His internal chronometer showed he'd been offline for 7 hours while his mother box technology repaired damage from Vader's force lightning. Captain Cassian Andor sat in the pilot's seat, monitoring readouts while a protocol droid, K2SO, stood at the navigation console. The droid turned its photoreceptors toward Cyborg as his optics activated. "The anomaly is functional again," K2SO observed. "The statistical probability of surviving a direct encounter with Darth Vader is approximately 3%. You either possess exceptional capabilities or exceptional luck." "Little of both," Victor said, his voice slightly distorted as his vocal processors recalibrated. He sat up, running internal diagnostics. His systems showed 72% integrity, damaged but operational. "Where are we headed?" "Currently maintaining evasive patterns through the outer rim," Cassian said without turning from his controls. "Imperial forces are searching for us, but we've stayed ahead of them so far. The Alliance wants us to rendezvous at Dantooine," Cyborg interrupted, accessing the encrypted transmission Batman had sent hours earlier. His systems had downloaded it automatically even while he'd been unconscious. "Old rebel base. 72 hours from now." Cassian's hand moved toward his blaster. "How did you access that transmission?" "That frequency is triple encrypted. Because I'm not just cybernetic, I'm integrated with technology that's probably a few thousand years ahead of your current level," Victor explained, raising his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "I'm not a spy. I'm Victor Stone, also known as Cyborg. And the transmission was from Bruce Wayne, Batman, one of my teammates. We're all converging on Dantooine for reunification." K2SO processed this. Statistically improbable but consistent with observed data. The Alliance intelligence has tracked 6 other anomalies matching unusual capability profiles. If you're claiming association with them, that would explain the coordinated timing. Cassian relaxed slightly but kept his hand near his weapon. "Your teammates, they're like you. Different abilities, different specializations." 7 of us total, Cyborg confirmed. "We're called the Justice League. Where we come from, we're the primary defense against existential threats. We didn't choose to come to your galaxy, but we're here now. And from what I've seen of your empire." His optical sensors hardened with resolve. "We've fought tyranny before. We know how to win. The Empire isn't like other enemies," Cassian warned. "They control most of the galaxy. They have unlimited resources, millions of soldiers, thousands of ships. The rebellion is barely surviving." "Then you're about to get a significant advantage," Victor said. "When the Justice League operates together, we don't just fight battles, we change the paradigm of what's possible. Your empire is about to learn that the hard way." Batman stood in the ruins of Dantooine's abandoned rebel base, his cowl's sensors mapping every entrance, exit, and tactical position. He'd arrived 3 hours ahead of schedule, using a stolen Imperial shuttle he'd acquired on Coruscant through methods the rebellion probably didn't want detailed records of. The base was exactly as Imperial records described, damaged by Imperial assault years ago, stripped of valuable technology, and largely forgotten. Prefabricated structures stood in various states of decay, surrounded by Dantooine's endless grasslands. The main hangar could accommodate multiple ships. The command center's infrastructure was damaged but potentially functional. Perfect for an ambush, from either side. Bruce Wayne had spent his entire adult life preparing for contingencies and worst-case scenarios. He'd analyzed the tactical situation with characteristic thoroughness. Vader knew about Dantooine's old rebel presence, Imperial intelligence would flag unusual activity at abandoned installations, and the Empire would anticipate a reunion attempt. So Batman was preparing for the inevitable attack, transforming the ruins into a defensive position that would leverage his team's unique capabilities. From his utility belt, he produced a series of small devices, prototype technology he'd constructed from scavenged Imperial and Rebel components during his time on Coruscant. Some were sensor jammers, others were explosive traps, and several were completely unique innovations that merged Earth engineering principles with Star Wars technology in ways neither galaxy had seen before. Alfred would say I'm being paranoid, Bruce muttered to himself, placing a mine near the eastern approach. Alfred would be right. But that's why I'm still alive. A sound reached him, repulsor engines approaching from the north. Batman melted into shadows, his hand moving to a modified batarang equipped with an EMP charge. But his cowl's sensors identified the ship's signature, Rebel transport, authentication codes matching the vessel assigned to Superman and Wonder Woman. He emerged from concealment as the ship landed, its boarding ramp descending to reveal Clark Kent and Diana Prince. Both looked road-worn from their journey but immediately alert and combat-ready. "Bruce," Clark said, relief evident in his voice. "You're alive." "Of course I'm alive," Batman replied, his tone characteristically dry. "I'm always alive. The question is whether you managed to avoid creating an international incident on Dantooine." "Only a small one," Superman admitted. "I might have destroyed a few Imperial walkers and liberated some prisoners. And I may have freed 200 political dissidents and defeated an Inquisitor," Wonder Woman added. "But we were discreet about it." Batman's expression behind his cowl suggested he doubted their definition of discretion. "The Empire has every major intelligence asset searching for all of us. Vader personally investigated Scarif to find Victor. You've both been classified as priority alpha threats. And based on Imperial communication patterns I've been monitoring, they know about this rendezvous. Then we'll be ready," Diana said simply. "How long until the others arrive?" "Flash should be here within 12 hours, he's aboard a cargo transport from Corellia. Green Lantern is approximately 18 hours out in a Mandalorian fighter. Aquaman is 20 hours away, traveling from Mon Cala. And Cyborg." Batman paused, accessing data through his cowl systems. "Victor's been offline since the Scarif extraction, but if he survived, he'll be here." Superman looked around the ruins, his X-ray vision examining the structural integrity. "This place won't hold against a sustained Imperial assault. We need defensible positions." "Already working on it," Batman said, leading them toward the command center. "I've been fortifying key positions, establishing sensor networks, and preparing contingencies. But we need to be realistic, when Vader comes, he'll bring overwhelming force. Star Destroyers, Walker divisions, possibly multiple Inquisitors. Let him," Wonder Woman said, her hand resting on her sword hilt. "We've faced worse odds. Darkseid. The Anti-Monitor. Brainiac. The Empire is formidable, but we've fought gods and won. This isn't our universe," Batman cautioned. "Our powers function differently here. Clark is operating at reduced capacity. Diana's connection to the gods is weakened. Barry's Speed Force link is degrading. Hal's ring can't recharge. We're all compromised in ways we don't fully understand yet. But we're together," Clark said firmly. "That's what matters. Separately, we've survived and even thrived in this galaxy. Together, we're the Justice League. That doesn't change just because we're a few million light-years from home." Batman was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Then let's make sure we're ready. We have approximately 50 hours before the last team member arrives. Vader won't wait much longer than that to strike. We need to fortify this position, establish escape routes, and prepare for the fight of our lives." The three founding members of the Justice League stood in the ruins of an alien rebel base, on a planet they'd never heard of 6 weeks ago, preparing to face an empire that spanned a galaxy. But they'd faced impossible odds before. They'd survived when victory seemed impossible before. And they'd do it again. In orbit above Sullust, Darth Vader stood aboard the Executor, studying holographic projections of Dantooine with cold calculation. His tactical officers had confirmed unusual energy signatures at the old rebel base, minimal, but consistent with covert activity. The anomalies are converging, Vader said, his mechanical breathing the only sound in the war room. All 7 will gather at this location within the next 3 standard days. Grand Admiral Titus stepped forward. Lord Vader, with your permission, I've assembled an assault force sufficient to overwhelm any conventional defense. 3 Star Destroyers, 6 Walker Divisions, 12 TIE Fighter Squadrons, and a full complement of Stormtrooper Legions. Additionally, I've recalled 4 Inquisitors from their assignments. They will arrive within 48 hours. Insufficient, Vader said flatly. Titus blinked in surprise. My lord. These beings are not conventional opponents, Vader explained, his gloved hand clenching into a fist. The Kryptonian possesses strength that rivals the Force itself. The Amazon warrior defeated an Inquisitor in single combat. The armored strategist infiltrated Imperial networks without detection. The cybernetic entity absorbed my lightning and escaped. And we have not yet determined the full capabilities of the remaining 3. He turned to face his officers. We will bring 6 Star Destroyers, not 3. Double the Walker complement. And I want orbital bombardment capabilities on standby. You intend to destroy them from orbit? Another officer asked. No, Vader replied. The Emperor wants them captured alive if possible. But I will not underestimate them again. The orbital bombardment will ensure they cannot escape if capture proves impossible. He paused, his mask turning toward the hologram. These anomalies represent something I have not encountered before, beings who exist outside the Force's natural order. That makes them either the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat the Empire has faced since the Jedi Purge. And if they prove to be a threat? Titus inquired carefully. Vader's lightsaber ignited with its characteristic snap hiss, the crimson blade casting harsh shadows across the war room. Then I will eliminate them personally. The Force is absolute. Nothing can stand against it forever. But even as he spoke, a small part of Darth Vader, the part that had once been Anakin Skywalker, wondered if that was true. These beings from beyond the stars carried power that didn't register in the Force, didn't follow its rules, and didn't seem impressed by its majesty. For the first time in years, the Dark Lord felt something he hadn't experienced since his transformation, uncertainty. On Corellia, the Flash's cargo transport dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Dantooine's system. Barry had spent the journey resting and trying to stabilize his deteriorating Speed-Force connection. His powers were now at approximately 60% of normal capacity, still superhuman, but the decline was accelerating. He'd been experimenting with hyperspace energy during the voyage, trying to understand if he could tap into it as an alternative power source. The results had been mixed. He could sense the dimensional energies that made faster-than-light travel possible, but actually accessing them was like trying to grab smoke. Approaching Dantooine, the cargo hauler's captain announced over the intercom. Dropping out of hyperspace in 10 minutes. You sure you want to be dropped at that old rebel base? Nothing there but ruins and bad memories. That's where I need to be, Barry confirmed, checking his suit one final time. The red and yellow costume had held up remarkably well considering everything he'd been through, though it bore new scorch marks from near misses with blaster fire. As the ship approached Dantooine's atmosphere, Barry felt something shift in his perception. Multiple presences, familiar energy signatures, not speed force, but something his enhanced senses recognized at a fundamental level. His team. They were here. Barry smiled behind his cowl. Soon, they'd be together again. Soon, they'd face whatever this galaxy threw at them as the Justice League. And maybe, just maybe, they'd figure out how to get home. Green Lantern's Mandalorian fighter screamed through hyperspace, its systems pushed to maximum efficiency. Hal had been making excellent time. The Fong-class starfighter was fast, maneuverable, and tough. Fen Rao had given him one of the best ships in Mandalore's arsenal. His ring showed 58% charge. Every hour, the percentage ticked lower. Hal had stopped creating unnecessary constructs, stopped testing his capabilities, and focused entirely on conservation. But the math was brutal. At current depletion rates, he had maybe 2 more weeks before the ring went completely dark. After that, he'd just be a skilled pilot with a fancy piece of jewelry. "Ring," Hal said aloud, addressing the ancient device. "If you can hear me, if there's any way to contact OA across dimensional barriers. We could really use some help here." The ring remained silent, its glow steady but unchanged. Hal sighed. He'd known it was a long shot. The Guardians of the Universe couldn't help if they didn't even know he existed in this dimension. He was on his own, or rather, he would be with his team soon. That would have to be enough. Aquaman's stolen Imperial transport maintained a steady course toward Dantooine, its forged identification codes holding up under automated inspection. Arthur had been careful to avoid major Imperial checkpoints, sticking to secondary hyperspace routes that added time to his journey but reduced the risk of discovery. He'd spent the voyage reflecting on his time with the Mon Calamari. The aquatic species reminded him of Atlantis in many ways, proud, ancient, and capable of tremendous strength when united. They'd been ground under Imperial oppression for years, but their resistance had never died. Arthur had given them tactical knowledge, combat training, and hope. But more than that, he'd reminded them what a king should be, not a distant ruler, but a warrior who fought alongside his people. When Mon Cala rose against the Empire, and Arthur believed they would, they'd be ready. And when that day came, the Justice League would be there to support them. But first, reunification. First, survival. Arthur checked his navigation display. 12 hours to Dantooine. 12 hours until he saw his teammates again. He couldn't wait. 7 heroes converging on a single point, drawn together by loyalty, friendship, and shared purpose. Behind them, the might of the Galactic Empire mobilized for confrontation. Ahead of them, a battle that would determine not just their survival, but their place in this galaxy's ongoing struggle between tyranny and freedom. The Justice League was coming home to each other. And Darth Vader was coming to ensure they never left Dantooine alive. The stage was set. The pieces were moving. And in 72 hours, the abandoned rebel base on a forgotten Outer Rim world would become the site of a clash that would echo across the stars. The Flash arrived first among the remaining 3, his cargo transport touching down on Dantooine's plains as twin suns painted the sky in shades of amber. Barry Allen practically vibrated with excitement as the boarding ramp lowered, not from his powers, but from sheer anticipation. 43 days separated from his team, scattered across an alien galaxy, surviving on his wits and diminishing abilities. He stepped off the ramp at normal speed, conserving what remained of his speed-force connection, and stopped dead in his tracks. Superman stood at the edge of the landing pad, arms crossed, cape billowing in Dantooine's persistent wind. His expression shifted from stern to genuinely warm as recognition sparked. "Barry. Clark." The Flash closed the distance in a red and yellow blur, not his full speed, but fast enough that most observers would have missed the movement entirely. He skidded to a stop, grinning behind his cowl. "Man, am I glad to see you. Do you have any idea how weird it's been? I've been running from space cops, hiding in cargo containers, eating alien food that I'm pretty sure wasn't meant for human consumption, and my powers are acting all kinds of wrong here." Wonder Woman emerged from the command center, her smile radiant despite the battle damage on her armor. "Barry. It's good to see you whole." "Diana." Flash hugged her with the enthusiasm of someone who'd spent 6 weeks thinking he'd never see friendly faces again. "You look great. Well, except for the blaster burns and the lightsaber scoring on your shield, but you know, great considering you've apparently been fighting an entire empire. Batman's voice cut through the reunion from the shadows of a nearby structure. Flash. Status report. What's your current Speed Force connection percentage and have you been compromised by Imperial intelligence? Barry turned toward the Dark Knight's position, his grin widening even more. Bruce. Still doing the whole lurk in shadows and demand tactical information thing. Some things never change, even in another galaxy. His expression sobered slightly. Speed Force connection is at about 60% and dropping. It's like, the energy doesn't exist the same way here. I can still tap into it, but it's fading. And no Imperial compromise, I've been careful. Mostly. Mostly, Batman repeated, stepping into the light. His cowl's white lenses fixed on Barry with characteristic intensity. Defined mostly. I mean, Sir SEC chased me across half of Corellia, and I'm pretty sure Imperial intelligence has me flagged as an anomaly, and there might be a bounty on my head from some smugglers whose cargo I accidentally vibrated through, but other than that, totally uncompromised. Superman's expression suggested he was suppressing a smile. We've all drawn attention, Barry. The Empire knows about us. They're actively hunting us. Great, Flash said, looking around the ruined base. So we're having a reunion at a place the Empire knows about, which means they're probably planning to crash the party with Star Destroyers and Stormtroopers and maybe that Darth Vader guy I've been hearing about on every Imperial broadcast. This is definitely a trap, right? Absolutely, Batman confirmed. Which is why we're preparing accordingly. Come with me. I need to brief you on defensive positions and... Can I eat first? Barry interrupted. I haven't had a decent meal in 3 days, and you know how my metabolism works. I'm literally starving. Diana laughed, a sound that seemed almost out of place in the military atmosphere of their situation. We have rations from the rebellion. Not Earth food, but sufficient. Sufficient works, Barry said, following them toward the command center. So who else is here? Just you three. Victor should arrive in the next few hours, Clark explained. Hal is approximately 10 hours out. Arthur is 12 hours behind him. By this time tomorrow, we'll all be together. And then Vader attacks, Batman added. Based on Imperial communication patterns I've intercepted, they're assembling a fleet in the Sullust system. 6 Star Destroyers, extensive ground forces, and multiple Inquisitors. They'll arrive within 48 hours of our full assembly. Barry absorbed this information, his mind processing at superhuman speed despite his reduced capabilities. Okay, so we've got maybe 60 hours total before the Empire tries to kill us all. That's, actually more time than I expected. Usually we get like 5 minutes warning before cosmic-level threats show up. This isn't our universe, Diana said gently. The rules are different. The Empire is vast, bureaucratic, and powerful, but they're also slow to mobilize. We have time to prepare. Then let's not waste it, Barry said, his characteristic optimism reasserting itself. We're the Justice League. We've fought Darkseid, stopped alien invasions, prevented apocalypses. One empire with anger issues? We've got this. Green Lantern's fighter dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Dantooine system 8 hours later, its sensors immediately detecting the 4 ships already on the surface. Hal felt a wave of relief so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. His ring flickered, 52% charge, but seeing those familiar vessel signatures made every percentage point he'd burned getting here worthwhile. The Fawn-class starfighter descended through Dantooine's atmosphere with the grace of a pilot who'd flown 1,000 different craft across multiple star systems. Hal brought it down on the landing pad adjacent to the other vessels, cutting engines and running shutdown procedures with practiced efficiency. Superman was waiting as the cockpit opened. Hal. Welcome back. Clark, Hal said, climbing out and immediately creating a construct, a simple green platform that lifted him gently to the ground rather than making him climb down. Force of habit, and he immediately regretted the unnecessary expenditure when his ring's charge dropped to 51.8%. Sorry. Still adjusting to rationing power. How bad is it? Clark asked, eyeing the ring with concern. Bad, Hal admitted. No connection to OA, no way to recharge from the central power battery. I've been running on reserve power since I arrived in this galaxy. At current depletion rate. He did the math quickly. I've got maybe 10 to 14 days before the ring goes completely dark. After that, I'm just a really good pilot with a fancy paperweight. Batman emerged from the command center, followed by Flash and Wonder Woman. The Dark Knight studied Hal's Mandalorian fighter with professional interest. Fong class. Excellent choice. Fast, maneuverable, heavily armed. Where did you acquire it? Mandalore, Hal explained. Long story involving an Inquisitor, a dogfight, and some very honorable warriors who gave me asylum. The fighter was a gift from their commander when I had to make a quick exit. The Mandalorians are known for their warrior culture and combat prowess, Batman noted. Gaining their respect is noteworthy. What did you do to earn it? Hal shrugged. Fought an Inquisitor to a standstill, demonstrated ring capabilities, and learned some of their combat techniques without relying entirely on the ring. Turns out they appreciate warriors who can fight without their primary weapon. Wise philosophy, Diana said approvingly. An Amazon lesson as well, the weapon is merely an extension of the warrior, not their sole source of strength. Speaking of which, Flash interjected, you're looking a little less green than usual, Hal. You okay? I'm fine, Hal said, though the strain was evident in his posture. Just adjusting to being a Green Lantern with an expiration date on his powers. But I'm here, I'm functional, and I can still create constructs when we need them. That'll have to be enough. It will be, Superman said firmly. You've always been more than just the ring, Hal. We all know that. Batman's cowl turned toward the sky, his sensors tracking something. We should move inside. There's a cargo transport approaching, Imperial signatures, but the transponder codes match Arthur's stolen vessel. He's ahead of schedule. 10 minutes later, Aquaman's transport settled onto the landing pad with less finesse than Hal's fighter but functional competence. The Atlantean King emerged from the boarding ramp, his armor still damp with Mon Cala's ocean water, his bearing every inch the monarch despite the alien surroundings. Diana. Clark. Bruce. Barry. Hal. Arthur greeted each of them in turn, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd spent weeks bearing responsibility alone. It's good to see all of you alive. Arthur, Diana said warmly, embracing him as an equal, warrior to warrior, leader to leader. You look like you've been through a war. Several, Arthur replied with a slight smile. Mon Cala is under brutal occupation. The Mon Calamari are building a resistance fleet, but the Empire. He shook his head. I've seen occupation before. Witnessed tyranny in Atlantis's ancient past. But this empire operates on a scale that's hard to comprehend. They control millions of worlds, billions of people. The oppression is systematic, efficient, and utterly ruthless. We've all seen it, Superman said quietly. Different planets, same story. The Empire rules through fear and overwhelming force. Which is why we're going to help the rebellion take it down, Flash added. Right? I mean, that's the plan. We're not just hiding out here hoping they forget about us. Batman's expression behind his cowl was unreadable. We're going to survive first. Then we'll determine our next move. But yes, Barry, we'll fight the Empire. We've seen too much to walk away even if we could find a way home. Speaking of which, Hal said, has anyone figured out how we got here? Or more importantly, how we get back? The question hung in the air. None of them had an answer. The boom tube malfunction, Superman began slowly, created some kind of dimensional rift. We fell through the spaces between universes. But I don't know if that passage still exists, or if we could even access it if it did. Victor might know more, Diana suggested. His mother box technology was integral to our arrival. If anyone can reverse engineer what happened, it's him. Then we wait for Cyborg, Batman said. He should be here within the next few hours. Once we're all assembled, we'll address the immediate threat, Vader's attack. After we survive that, we can focus on long-term planning. Always so optimistic, Bruce, Barry quipped, though his tone carried an edge of genuine concern. What if we don't survive Vader's attack? Then we die fighting an empire in another galaxy, Arthur said with the fatalism of a warrior king. There are worse ways to go. And at least we'll be together. The 6 assembled heroes stood in the ruins of Dantooine's rebel base, each bearing the marks of their separate struggles. Superman, still adjusting to unfamiliar solar radiation. Wonder Woman, her divine connection weakened but her warrior's spirit undiminished. Batman, his technological advantages neutralized by superior galactic engineering yet his mind as sharp as ever. Flash, his powers fading but his optimism intact. Green Lantern, operating on borrowed time with a ring that couldn't recharge. Aquaman. Far from any ocean that knew his authority yet commanding respect through sheer presence. They were diminished. Compromised. Operating in a hostile galaxy with limited resources and overwhelming enemies. They were the Justice League. And they'd faced worse odds before. Where's Victor? Arthur asked, looking around. You said he was coming. As if in answer, the sky above Dantooine lit up with the distinctive blue tunnel of a ship dropping out of hyperspace. The rebel transport descended rapidly, its approach pattern aggressive and evasive, the flight path of someone expecting pursuit. The ship landed hard, its landing gear absorbing the impact with protest. Before the boarding ramp fully extended, Cyborg emerged, his optical sensors glowing with urgency. We've got a problem, Victor announced without preamble. The Empire tracked us from Sullust. I tried to shake them in the Trian system, but they've got our trajectory. Vader's fleet is already en route, they'll be here in 18 hours instead of 48. Batman's posture shifted imperceptibly, the only outward sign of his tactical recalculation. How many ships? 6 Star Destroyers, just like you predicted, Cyborg said, his systems interfacing with the base's damaged computer networks even as he spoke. But there's more. Vader's bringing 12 Inquisitors, every Force-sensitive enforcer the Empire has in this sector. And he's requested additional support from the Imperial Navy. Bruce, they're treating this like a major military operation, not a simple capture mission. Because we're not a simple target, Diana said. Vader learned that at Scarif. He won't underestimate us again. Superman looked at his assembled team, all 7 members together for the first time since the boom tube accident. Battered, compromised, but whole. Then we show them why underestimating the Justice League was their first mistake. What's our defensive posture, Bruce? Batman pulled up a holographic display showing the base and surrounding terrain. I've fortified key positions and established sensor perimeters. But we're not defending this base, that's what Vader expects. Instead, we use it as bait. When his forces commit to the assault, we execute a fighting retreat that channels them into kill zones where our unique capabilities give us maximum advantage. You want to use guerrilla tactics against an empire, Arthur observed. Fighting on our terms, not theirs. Exactly, Batman confirmed. We can't match their numbers or their firepower. But we can be unpredictable, mobile, and lethal. Superman and Wonder Woman handle heavy armor and air superiority. Flash provides rapid response and civilian evacuation if any rebel forces arrive. Green Lantern maintains aerial denial and constructs defensive positions. Aquaman, there are underground water channels beneath this base. Can you use them? Arthur's smile was predatory. Give me a schematic and I'll turn them into tactical advantages. Underground mobility, ambush points, and escape routes the Empire won't see coming. Cyborg, you're our eyes and our ace in the hole, Batman continued. Interface with Imperial communications, feed us real-time intelligence, and when the moment's right, crash their network coordination. Make them deaf, dumb, and blind. Victor's optical sensors brightened. I can do more than that. I've been analyzing Imperial command protocols. Give me access to their fleet systems and I can turn their own ships against them. And me? Flash asked. Besides the running really fast and hitting things repeatedly. You're our chaos factor, Batman said. Vader can predict most tactical responses through the Force. But your speed, especially at 60% capacity, operates on a different temporal scale than most of this galaxy's combat. You'll move in ways the Force can't easily anticipate. Use that. The Justice League stood together, illuminated by Dantooine's setting suns, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, they felt complete. Diminished individually, perhaps. But together, they were something the Empire had never faced. They were heroes who'd saved worlds, fought gods, and refused to surrender even when victory seemed impossible. And they were about to teach Darth Vader and the Galactic Empire what that meant. 18 hours, Superman said, looking at each of his teammates. Let's make them count. Because when Vader arrives, we're not running. We're not hiding. We're showing this galaxy what Earth's finest can do when we stand together. For truth, Diana said, raising her sword. For justice, Clark added, his cape snapping in the wind. And for each other, Bruce finished. Justice League, prepare for war. The first wave of Imperial landing craft touched down 2 kilometers from the base, their massive forms settling onto Dantooine's plains with mechanical precision. Boarding ramps descended with hydraulic hisses, and stormtroopers poured out in disciplined formations, hundreds, then thousands, spreading across the grasslands in textbook assault patterns. From his vantage point atop the highest structure, Superman watched through telescopic vision as AT-AT walkers were unloaded from heavy transports. The massive 4-legged behemoths dwarfed anything he'd seen on Earth, their weapons capable of reducing buildings to rubble. Behind them came AT-ST scouts, smaller but faster, designed for rapid assault and close support. Bruce, Clark said quietly into his comm, they're deploying enough firepower to level a city. Are we sure about this? We're sure, Batman replied from the command center. Let them advance. Let them think we're trapped. Above the battlefield, TIE fighters screamed through Dantooine's night sky in perfect formations, their twin ion engines painting the darkness with eerie green light. They established air superiority patterns, waiting for ground forces to flush out their targets. Vader's shuttle descended last, landing in the center of the Imperial formation. The Dark Lord emerged flanked by his 12 Inquisitors, men and women in black armor, their red lightsabers ignited and spinning in synchronized menace. They were the Empire's elite force users, trained specifically to hunt and kill, and they moved with predatory confidence. Anomalies, Vader's voice boomed across the battlefield, amplified through external speakers on his suit. You are surrounded by 6 Imperial Star Destroyers, 3,000 Stormtroopers, 24 Walkers, and 60 TIE Fighter squadrons. Surrender immediately, and your terminations will be swift. Resist, and you will learn the true meaning of suffering. In the ruins, Flash vibrated with barely contained energy. Is anyone else thinking about how many times we've heard that speech? Bad guys really need better material. Shoo, Green Lantern hissed from his aerial position. Batman's timing has to be perfect. The Imperial forces began their advance. Stormtroopers moved in coordinated squads, covering each other with professional discipline. The AT-ATS lumbered forward, their massive legs shaking the ground with each step. AT-STS bounded ahead, their pilots scanning for targets. 1 kilometer from the base. 800 meters. 500. Now, Batman said quietly. Superman moved first. He launched from his position with enough force to crack the structure beneath him, becoming a red and blue blur that crossed the distance to the nearest AT-AT in seconds. The walker's crew never saw him coming. Clark struck the walker's forward left leg with calculated precision, not his full strength, but enough to shear through the durasteel joint with a shriek of tearing metal. The AT-AT toppled, its massive body crashing into two others and creating instant chaos in the Imperial formation. Before the stormtroopers could react, Superman was already moving to the next walker, his heat vision carving through its cockpit viewports. Wonder Woman erupted from the base's main entrance like a force of nature. Her sword gleamed in starlight as she charged the advancing stormtrooper formations. Blaster bolts filled the air, but her bracelets became a blur of silver, deflecting every shot. She reached the first squad and moved through them with Amazonian precision, disarming, incapacitating, but not killing. These were soldiers following orders, not the architects of tyranny. An AT-ST turned its weapons toward her. Diana raised her shield as the walker's cannons roared, the impact creating a shockwave that cratered the ground beneath her feet. But she held, her divine strength channeling the force into the earth. Then she moved, closing the distance in a single leap that carried her 20 meters straight up. Her sword pierced the AT-ST's cockpit hatch, and with a wrench of superhuman strength, she tore it open. The pilot surrendered immediately, staring at the warrior woman who'd just torn through military-grade armor with her bare hands. "I am Diana of Themyscira," she declared, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "And I do not yield to tyrants." Green Lantern's constructs lit up the night sky with emerald brilliance. Massive anti-aircraft batteries materialized from willpower alone, their barrels tracking TIE fighters with precision. Hal's ring was down to 42%, but he made every construct count. Green energy lanced through the darkness, not destroying the fighters but disabling their engines. Pilots ejected across the battlefield, parachuting to safety while their craft crashed in controlled descents. "Sorry about your rides," Hal called out, even as he created a giant flyswatter construct that knocked 3 more TIEs out of formation. "Nothing personal, but you're working for the wrong side." Flash became chaos incarnate. He raced through the Imperial lines at speeds the stormtroopers couldn't track, disarming soldiers before they could pull triggers, relocating ammunition crates, and generally creating havoc that shattered military discipline. To the Imperials, it seemed like their equipment was malfunctioning, weapons disappeared, targeting systems went haywire, commanders found themselves suddenly 50 meters from where they'd been standing a second ago. "This is actually fun." Barry laughed over the comm, his voice slightly distorted by the speed force. "I mean, terrifying, and we're probably all going to die, but also fun." "Focus, Flash," Batman's voice cut through the chaos. AT-AT advancing on the western perimeter. "Remove it." Barry changed direction in an instant, becoming a red and yellow streak that ran up the walker's leg, across its back, and directly into the cockpit viewport. He vibrated through the transparasteel, appeared inside with the shocked crew, and systematically disabled every control system in the time it took them to register his presence. The AT-AT froze mid-step, becoming an immobile metal monument. "Walker down," Flash reported. "Also, these things have terrible ergonomics. How does anyone pilot these for more than an hour?" Beneath the battlefield, Aquaman felt the tremors of combat through the water channels. He waited with the patience of someone who'd hunted in Atlantis's darkest trenches, feeling the positions of walkers and troops through their impact on groundwater currents. 3 AT-ATs had positioned themselves over a section where the underground channels ran close to the surface. Arthur smiled in the darkness and spoke to the water itself, not words, but a communication deeper than language. The water responded to its king. The channels erupted upward with the force of depth charges. Thousands of gallons of pressurized water exploded beneath the walkers, turning the ground to instant mud that couldn't support their immense weight. All 3 AT-ATs sank to their knees in seconds, pilots struggling with controls as their vehicles became trapped in liquefied earth. Arthur emerged from a concealed access point behind Imperial lines, water cascading from his armor. A squad of stormtroopers turned to fire, but he moved with the speed of someone who'd fought in three-dimensional ocean warfare. His trident flashed, deflecting blaster bolts, and then he was among them, not killing, but efficiently neutralizing threats with the combat expertise of Atlantis' greatest warrior. Cyborg's consciousness exploded across Imperial communication networks the moment Vader's fleet entered optimal range. Victor's mother box technology interfaced with Imperial systems in ways their engineers had never conceived possible. He wasn't just hacking, he was becoming part of their infrastructure, spreading through command channels like digital wildfire. "Got you," Victor said in the command center, his physical form motionless while his consciousness operated across dozens of systems simultaneously. "Let's see how you like fighting blind." Targeting systems across the Imperial formation suddenly went haywire. IFF transponders started reporting friendly units as hostile. Communication channels filled with contradictory orders that all carried proper authentication codes. Navigation data for TIE fighters became scrambled, forcing pilots to rely on visual confirmation alone. "What is happening?" Imperial officers demanded across multiple channels. "Who is disrupting our systems?" "This is your tech support," Cyborg's voice responded through every speaker in the Imperial formation. "You've been experiencing some technical difficulties. Please remain calm while we resolve your connection issues. Estimated time to restoration, never." On the Executor in orbit, Grand Admiral Titus stared at his malfunctioning tactical displays in horror. "Lord Vader, we've lost network coordination across all ground forces. It's as if something is inside our systems, controlling them from within." Vader stood motionless for a moment, his breathing apparatus cycling with mechanical rhythm. Then he ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade casting harsh shadows across the bridge. "The cybernetic anomaly. It has infiltrated our network." He turned toward the viewport, looking down at the battle below. "No matter. The Inquisitors will capture them regardless of technical support." The Dark Lord reached out through the Force, touching the minds of his 12 Force-sensitive warriors on the surface. Inquisitors. Engage the anomalies directly. They cannot stand against the Force itself. The Inquisitors moved as one, their spinning lightsabers carving through the darkness. They converged on the base from multiple directions, using Force-enhanced speed to close the distance rapidly. They were trained hunters, experienced in combat against Force-sensitives, and they moved with lethal coordination. Superman saw them coming through the chaos of the battlefield. 12 figures in black armor, their red lightsabers spinning like wheels of death, moving faster than normal humans could achieve. He intercepted the nearest three, landing between them and Wonder Woman's position with enough force to crack the ground. "That's far enough," Clark said. The lead Inquisitor, a female human with cruel eyes visible behind her helmet, smiled. "The Kryptonian. Lord Vader warned us about you. But you bled when he struck you. You can be hurt. And what can be hurt can be killed." She unleashed Force lightning, joined by her two companions. Triple streams of crackling energy converged on Superman from different angles. The pain was immediate and intense, not as overwhelming as Vader's attack, but sustained, coordinated, designed to wear him down. Clark gritted his teeth and pushed forward through the lightning. His invulnerability was compromised by Force attacks, but he was still Superman. He closed the distance and grabbed two lightsabers by their blades. The plasma couldn't cut his skin, though the heat was painful. With a twist of superhuman strength, he wrenched both weapons from the Inquisitor's grips and crushed them with his bare hands. "I fought gods," Superman said, his eyes beginning to glow red. "You're just bullies with laser swords." His heat vision lanced out, not at the Inquisitors themselves but at the ground beneath their feet. Superheated Earth exploded upward, throwing them off balance and breaking their coordinated attack. Wonder Woman engaged 4 Inquisitors simultaneously, her sword meeting their lightsabers in showers of sparks and plasma. The Force users moved with preternatural speed. But Diana had been training in combat since before most civilizations on Earth had developed writing. She read their patterns, anticipated their strikes, and countered with techniques honed across millennia. "You fight well," one Inquisitor admitted, his lightsaber locked against her sword. "For someone who doesn't understand the Force." "I understand that true strength comes from within," Diana replied, her blade suddenly shifting angle and disarming him with a move he never saw coming. "Not from mystical energy that can be stripped away." Her shield bash sent him flying backward. She spun, deflected 3 simultaneous lightsaber strikes with her bracelets, and delivered a kick that would have killed a normal human but merely incapacitated the Force-enhanced warrior. Green Lantern found himself facing 3 Inquisitors who'd taken to the air, their Force abilities letting them hover and pursue him through the sky. His ring was at 38% and dropping fast, every construct was burning through reserves he couldn't replace. "You rely on technology," one Inquisitor called out, his lightsaber spinning. "The Force is eternal. Your weapon will fail. You will fail." "Yeah, I've heard that speech before," Hal replied, creating a construct baseball bat that knocked the Inquisitor out of the air. "Thing is, this ring responds to willpower. And buddy, I've got willpower to spare." He created a giant green cage that captured all 3 Inquisitors, then compressed it rapidly, not enough to hurt them, but enough to disorient and contain. His ring dropped to 34%. Every construct was now a calculated risk. Flash vibrated through lightsaber strikes, his reduced speed Force connection still sufficient to phase through solid matter. 2 Inquisitors tried to corner him, their weapons creating a net of plasma blades that should have been inescapable. Barry simply vibrated through the entire attack and appeared behind them. "You know what's great about moving faster than people can think? They never see the punch coming." He delivered a series of rapid strikes, each one individually weak, but dozens landing in a single second. The Inquisitors staggered under the barrage, their Force precognition useless against someone who literally operated on a different temporal scale. Aquaman erupted from an underground access point directly beneath the final Inquisitor, his trident glowing with mystical power that even Force users could sense. The Inquisitor brought his lightsaber around in a defensive arc, but Arthur's weapon had been forged by Atlantean gods, plasma blade met enchanted trident and the lightsaber simply shattered. "I've ruled kingdoms older than your empire," Arthur said, his trident at the Inquisitor's throat. "Stand down, or learn why Atlantis has never been conquered." The Inquisitor yielded. Across the battlefield, the Justice League had systematically dismantled the Imperial assault. Walkers lay crippled or captured. Stormtroopers surrendered in droves, overwhelmed by opponents they couldn't hurt with conventional weapons. TIE fighters littered the plains, disabled but intact. And all 12 Inquisitors, the Empire's elite Force-sensitive warriors, had been defeated in less than 10 minutes of engagement. In orbit, Vader watched his tactical displays with something approaching shock. His breathing apparatus cycled faster, the only outward sign of his emotional state. The anomalies hadn't just survived his assault, they'd dominated it. His carefully planned capture operation had collapsed into chaos. "Lord Vader," Admiral Titus said carefully, "should we initiate orbital bombardment?" Vader's hand clenched into a fist. The Emperor wanted these beings captured, studied, potentially turned into assets. But Palpatine hadn't witnessed what Vader was seeing now, 7 individuals systematically dismantling Imperial military doctrine through sheer capability and coordination. They were more dangerous than he'd imagined. More dangerous, perhaps, than anything the Empire had faced since the Jedi Purge. "No," Vader said finally. "I will handle this personally." His shuttle launched from the Executor, descending toward Dantooine's surface with the Dark Lord's full attention focused on the battle below. The Force swirled around him, dark and vast and terrible. The Justice League had won the first engagement. But the real battle was about to begin. Vader's shuttle descended through Dantooine's atmosphere like a falling dagger, its black hull reflecting no light as it cut through the smoke and chaos of the battlefield below. The Justice League stood among the wreckage of the Imperial assault, disabled walkers, surrendered stormtroopers, and defeated Inquisitors scattered across the plains. They'd won decisively, but Batman's tactical mind recognized the pattern. Vader had been testing them, measuring their capabilities. Now the real fight would begin. "He's coming," Superman said, his enhanced vision tracking the shuttle's descent. "Everyone stay sharp. We proved we can handle his forces. Now he'll want to prove he can handle us." The shuttle landed with mechanical precision in the center of the battlefield. Its boarding ramp descended with a hiss of pressurized air, and Darth Vader emerged, a figure of pure menace in black armor, his cape billowing in Dantooine's night wind, his breathing apparatus cycling with its characteristic mechanical rhythm. He surveyed the battlefield with deliberate slowness, taking in the disabled walkers, the captured inquisitors, the thousands of stormtroopers who'd surrendered to 7 individuals. When he spoke, his mechanical voice carried across the ruins with absolute authority. "Impressive. You have systematically dismantled a force that has conquered star systems. You fight with coordination that suggests extensive combat experience. And you possess abilities that defy conventional explanation." Vader's mask turned toward each of them in turn. "But I have faced Jedi Masters who could move mountains with the Force. I have killed beings who thought themselves gods. And I have survived battles that would have destroyed lesser warriors." His lightsaber ignited with its signature snap hiss, the crimson blade casting harsh shadows. "Now, you will face Darth Vader at full capability. And you will learn that the Force is absolute." Wonder Woman stepped forward. Her sword raised. "I am Diana, Princess of Themyscira, and I have fought beings who actually were gods. Your reputation means nothing to me, Sith Lord. Surrender your forces and leave this world, or face the consequence of your arrogance." Vader's response was to raise his hand. The Force erupted with violent intent, not at Diana, but at the ruins surrounding the Justice League. Massive chunks of debris, pieces of fallen walkers, sections of destroyed structures all rose into the air simultaneously, dozens of tons of metal and stone hovering like a storm of deadly projectiles. "Let us see how you handle this," Vader said, and unleashed the telekinetic barrage. Superman reacted instantly, his heat vision carving through the larger pieces while his body intercepted the rest. Debris that could have crushed buildings bounced harmlessly off his chest. But Vader had anticipated this. Some of the projectiles were red herrings, drawing attention while others came from blind angles. A section of Walker armor struck Batman, sending him sprawling despite his suit's protective capabilities. Flash vibrated to phase through incoming debris, but his reduced speed force connection made the technique exhausting. He had to choose which pieces to avoid and which to tank. Green Lantern created an emerald shield, but each impact drained precious power from his already depleted ring. Vader moved through the chaos like a wraith, his lightsaber deflecting the few pieces of debris that threatened him while he closed distance with inhuman speed. He targeted Wonder Woman first. She'd shown disrespect, and Vader had learned that breaking the confident ones first often shattered group cohesion. Their blades met with a sound like thunder. Diana's god-forged sword locked against the plasma blade, and for a moment, warrior and Sith Lord were frozen in contest of pure strength. Vader pushed with the Force, trying to overwhelm her. But Diana had been blessed by Olympian gods with strength that transcended normal physical limits. "You are strong," Vader acknowledged, his breathing rasping through his vocabulator. "But the Force offers more than mere physical power." Lightning erupted from his free hand, point-blank range, impossible to dodge. Diana's body seized as electrical energy coursed through her, pain lancing across her nervous system. She'd been struck by Zeus's lightning in training and survived, but this was different, targeted, malicious, designed to incapacitate rather than test. Superman tackled Vader with the speed of a missile, carrying the Sith Lord away from Diana and smashing him through a ruined wall. They tumbled across the ground in a blur of red cape and black armor, trading blows that would have killed normal humans. Clark's fist connected with Vader's chest plate, denting the armor. Vader's elbow slammed into Superman's jaw with force-enhanced strength that actually staggered the Kryptonian. "You are powerful, Kryptonian," Vader said, his lightsaber coming around in a vicious arc that Superman barely dodged. "But you fight with restraint. You fear killing. That is your weakness. It's called having principles, Superman replied, his heat vision forcing Vader to disengage. Something you sacrificed when you became a monster. The word struck something in Vader, some buried memory of the man he'd been before the armor, before the dark side. His rage intensified, and with it, his connection to the Force. He extended both hands and unleashed pure telekinetic force, not throwing objects but directly attacking Superman's body with invisible pressure. Clark felt himself being compressed from all sides, his invulnerability tested by power that bypassed normal physics. He gritted his teeth and pushed back, using raw strength against mystical energy in a contest that neither could truly win. Flash appeared in a red and yellow blur, delivering a series of rapid strikes to Vader's midsection, punches that would have reduced a normal person to paste. But Vader's armor was designed to withstand extreme punishment, and his Force precognition let him roll with many of the impacts. Still, the sheer number of strikes in a single second staggered him, breaking his concentration on Superman. "Thanks, Barry," Clark gasped, pulling free from the telekinetic grip. "Don't mention it," Flash replied, already moving to avoid Vader's retaliatory Force push. "Though seriously, this guy is tough. I've hit him like 50 times and he's barely." Vader caught Barry with a Force grip mid-sentence, seizing the speedster despite his velocity. For an instant, Flash was frozen in mid-air, held by invisible power that his phasing couldn't escape. "Your speed is considerable," Vader observed. "But you cannot outrun the Force itself." He hurled Flash toward a ruined structure with bone-breaking force. Superman intercepted him mid-flight, cushioning the impact, but the exchange had demonstrated Vader's tactical adaptability. He was learning their abilities in real time, adjusting his approach, finding weaknesses. Green Lantern created a massive construct battering ram, swinging it at Vader with all his remaining willpower. The emerald energy connected, sending the Sith Lord skidding backward across the battlefield. But Vader recovered instantly, his lightsaber carving through the construct and severing Hal's connection to it. "Willpower made manifest," Vader said, studying the ring's glow. "An interesting weapon. But it has limits. I can sense your power waning." "Still got enough to kick your ass," Hal retorted, creating a giant green fist that hammered down from above. Vader caught it with the Force, holding the construct in place through sheer dark side power. For a moment it was a direct contest, Green Lantern's willpower versus Vader's connection to the Force. Hal's ring dropped to 27% as he poured energy into the construct. Vader's breathing grew labored as he channeled the dark side to counter it. The stalemate broke when Aquaman emerged from underground directly beneath Vader, his trident thrust upward with Atlantean strength. The enchanted weapon pierced Vader's cape and scraped against his armor, not penetrating but forcing him to abandon his Force hold and dodge. "You fight from below like a coward," Vader accused, his lightsaber coming around to engage Arthur's trident. "I fight smart," Aquaman replied, his trident meeting the lightsaber in a shower of sparks. "Something you'd understand if you weren't so busy monologuing." Their weapons locked, plasma against mystical metal, and both warriors recognized the other's skill immediately. Vader had trained in lightsaber combat for decades. Arthur had fought in Atlantean wars that predated most surface civilizations. Neither could gain quick advantage. Wonder Woman rejoined the battle, her recovery from the lightning attack testament to her divine heritage. She came at Vader from his blind side, her sword aimed at the joints in his armor where vulnerable electronics might be exposed. Vader sensed her approach through the Force and disengaged from Aquaman, spinning to deflect her strike with his lightsaber. Now he faced two master warriors simultaneously, their weapons probing for weaknesses while he defended with precision that bordered on precognitive. Because it was precognitive, the Force showed him their intentions a microsecond before they acted, giving him the edge needed to counter. But even Vader's precognition had limits when facing opponents this skilled and this fast. Batman's voice cut through the chaos on the team comm, "He's adapting too quickly. Every second he fights us, he learns. We need to change the paradigm. Victor, can you create a distraction?" On it, Cyborg replied from the command center. His consciousness still embedded in Imperial networks. Across the battlefield, every Imperial vehicle's communication system suddenly activated simultaneously, blaring a sound that Victor had calculated specifically to be maximally disorienting to Force users, a resonance frequency that created interference in the mystical energy field itself. It wasn't enough to disable Vader, but it was enough to disrupt his concentration. In that instant of disruption, Superman moved. Not to attack Vader directly, but to position himself between the Sith Lord and the rest of his team. Bruce is right, you're learning too fast. So new plan, you fight me. Arrogant, Vader said. You think you can defeat me alone? No, Superman admitted. But I can hold you long enough for my team to evacuate the wounded and regroup. You want me? Come get me. Clark rocketed skyward, deliberately drawing Vader's attention. The Sith Lord couldn't fly, not truly, but he could use the Force to leap extraordinary distances. He pursued, each Force-enhanced jump carrying him dozens of meters through the air as he chased Superman across Dantooine's ruins. Scatter. Batman commanded. Execute Contingency Delta 7. Regroup at secondary coordinates. The Justice League dispersed with practiced efficiency. Flash carried the injured stormtroopers who'd surrendered to safe positions away from the battle. Green Lantern created constructs to transport the captured Inquisitors to secured locations. Wonder Woman and Aquaman moved to defensive positions where they could support Superman if needed. And Batman melted into shadows, already planning 3 moves ahead. Superman led Vader away from his team, drawing the Sith Lord into a running battle across the ruined base. They clashed repeatedly, lightsaber against invulnerable flesh, force lightning against heat vision, telekinetic power against raw strength. Neither could gain decisive advantage. You cannot win this. Vader said, his breathing labored from exertion. The Emperor has commanded that you be taken alive. But if you continue to resist, I will be forced to kill you. Is that truly what you want? What I want, Superman replied, dodging another lightsaber strike, is for you to understand something. We didn't come to your galaxy to conquer or rule. We came here by accident. But we've seen what your empire does. The oppression. The fear. The cruelty. And we've decided we're not going to stand by and watch it happen. Noble sentiment, Vader said. Futile in practice. The Empire is infinite. You are 7. Even with your abilities, you cannot change the galaxy. Maybe not, Clark admitted, catching Vader's next strike and crushing the lightsaber hilt in his hand. The weapon sparked and died, leaving Vader temporarily disarmed. But we can inspire others to try. That's what heroes do. We show people that resistance is possible. Vader stood motionless for a moment, his primary weapon destroyed, facing an opponent he couldn't defeat through conventional means. Then he laughed, a sound made terrible by his mechanical respirator. You think you are heroes, Vader said. How amusing. I was once like you. I fought for justice, protected the innocent, believed I could save everyone. His voice dropped to something almost resembling genuine emotion. The galaxy taught me otherwise. It will teach you the same lesson, through pain, through loss, through the absolute futility of your noble intentions. I'm sorry for whatever broke you, Superman said sincerely. But we're not you. We won't let this galaxy break us. Then you will die heroes, Vader replied. How tragic. He reached out through the Force, not at Superman but at the ruins surrounding them. Every structure, every piece of debris, every loose object within 100 meters radius rose into the air simultaneously. Vader was no longer trying to capture, he was trying to kill. The entire mass came crashing down on Superman with the force of an avalanche, tons upon tons of metal and stone and shattered equipment. Clark disappeared beneath the debris, buried under a mountain of wreckage. For a moment, silence fell across the battlefield. Vader stood at the edge of the debris pile, his breathing the only sound, waiting to see if the Kryptonian would emerge. Then the wreckage exploded outward as Superman rose from it like a phoenix, his cape torn but his resolve unshaken. "I've been buried under collapsing buildings before, Vader. It didn't work then either." But Clark's defiance masked genuine exhaustion. Vader's attacks were taking their toll. The combination of lightsaber wounds, superficial but painful, force lightning, which bypassed his invulnerability, and sustained combat against a master warrior was wearing him down in ways he rarely experienced. And Vader saw it. "You are flagging, Kryptonian. Your strength is considerable but not infinite. Eventually, you will fall. Accept the inevitable." "Never," Superman said, launching forward for another exchange. They clashed again and again, their battle ranging across kilometers of terrain, each exchange demonstrating why they were among the most powerful beings in their respective realities. But neither could gain decisive victory. Vader's force powers kept him competitive despite Superman's raw physical superiority, while Clark's speed and strength prevented Vader from landing a killing blow. In the command center, Batman monitored the battle through multiple sensor feeds while Cyborg maintained his network disruption. "Superman's vitals are dropping. He can't sustain this much longer. We need an extraction." "How?" Cyborg asked. "Vader won't let him disengage." Batman's expression behind his cowl was grim. "Then we don't ask permission. Diana, Arthur, get ready to execute a full-team extraction on my mark. Hal, I need everything your ring has left for one massive construct. Barry, you're our speed. And Victor, crash every Imperial system simultaneously. I want complete chaos. That'll reveal how deep I am in their network," Cyborg warned. "They'll purge me from their systems." "Do it anyway," Batman commanded. Clark's survival is worth the tactical sacrifice. The Justice League moved as one, converging on Superman's position from multiple vectors. Wonder Woman flew in from the east, her lasso ready. Aquaman emerged from underground channels directly beneath the battlefield. Green Lantern created the largest construct he'd ever attempted, a massive green hand that reached down from the sky. Flash became a red and yellow blur moving faster than even his degraded speed force should have allowed, pushing himself beyond safe limits. And Cyborg unleashed every tool in his arsenal against Imperial networks simultaneously. Across the battlefield, Imperial systems crashed. Communications went dead. Targeting computers failed. Navigation systems froze. Every screen in every vehicle displayed the same message: "You should have let us leave peacefully." Justice League. In the chaos of total systems failure, the Justice League executed their extraction. Diana's lasso wrapped around Superman, not to restrain but to guide. Arthur created a massive water eruption that obscured visibility. Hal's construct hand descended, grabbed all 7 team members, and hurled them toward the horizon with every bit of remaining ring power. Flash ran beneath them, using his speed to create a slipstream that accelerated their flight even further. They covered 10 kilometers in seconds, landing in a pre-prepared position that Batman had established hours earlier, a natural canyon with defensible approaches and multiple escape routes. Vader stood alone in the ruined base, surrounded by disabled Imperial equipment and the chaos of complete systems failure. He'd been outmaneuvered by beings who fought not with force powers but with teamwork, tactical planning, and stubborn refusal to surrender. The Dark Lord ignited a backup lightsaber, he always carried multiple weapons, and stared in the direction the anomalies had fled. Impressive, he admitted to the empty battlefield. But this is not over. I will find you again. And next time, you will not escape. In orbit above Dantooine, Grand Admiral Titus struggled to restore basic functionality to the fleet's systems. The cybernetic anomaly had done catastrophic damage, it would take days to fully purge the corruption and restore normal operations. Lord Vader, Titus transmitted to the surface through one of the few remaining communication channels, should we deploy reinforcements? Pursue the anomalies? Vader's response was cold and measured, no. They have proven more dangerous than anticipated. I will report to the Emperor. This requires a different approach. The Battle of Dantooine was over. The Justice League had survived against overwhelming odds, demonstrated their capabilities to the galaxy, and established themselves as a force the Empire could neither ignore nor easily eliminate. But they'd also revealed their limitations. Vader now knew how they fought, what they could do, and, most importantly, that they could be hurt. The next confrontation would be even more dangerous, because the Empire would come prepared. In the canyon, the 7 heroes tended their wounds and caught their breath. Superman's cape was torn, his suit scorched. Wonder Woman bore burns from Force lightning. Green Lantern's ring showed 8% charge. Flash was barely conscious from Speed Force exhaustion. Everyone carried injuries, fatigue, and the weight of a battle that had pushed them to their limits. We survived, Barry said, managing a weak smile. That counts as a win, right? We survived, Batman agreed. But Vader will report to the Emperor. Palpatine will adjust his strategy. This was just the opening move. Then we'll be ready for the next one, Diana said firmly. We're the Justice League. We don't surrender. Ever. Superman looked at his team, battered, diminished, but unbroken, and felt pride surge through his exhaustion. She's right. We're in this together. And together, we'll find a way to make a difference in this galaxy. And maybe, Hal added, his ring flickering, we'll find a way home. But even as he said it, they all knew the truth, home was impossibly far away, possibly unreachable. They were stranded in a hostile galaxy, hunted by an empire, and operating with failing powers. They were the Justice League in exile. And their war for survival had only just begun. 3 days after the Battle of Dantooine, the Justice League had vanished into the galaxy's shadows. They'd scattered deliberately, not as individuals this time, but as coordinated cells operating across multiple systems, each pursuing different objectives while maintaining encrypted communication through networks Cyborg had established. The Empire searched frantically, but 7 people were remarkably easy to lose in a galaxy of trillions. On Coruscant, in the deepest levels where Imperial authority was more suggestion than reality, Batman sat across from Mon Mothma in a secure safe house. The rebel leader studied him with the careful assessment of someone who'd survived decades of political intrigue. Your performance on Dantooine has spread across every rebel cell in the galaxy, Mon Mothma said. 7 individuals held off Darth Vader and an Imperial assault force. You've become symbols, whether you intended to or not. Symbols are useful, Batman replied, his voice modulated through his cowl. But we're more valuable as active participants. You need intelligence on Imperial operations. I can provide it. You need tactical planning for operations the Alliance considers too risky. I specialize in impossible missions. And you need someone who can operate in places the rebellion can't officially acknowledge. Mon Mothma's expression showed cautious interest. You're proposing a formal alliance. I'm proposing a partnership, Batman corrected. The Justice League operates independently, but our goals align with yours. Freedom from tyranny. Protection of the innocent. Justice for those who've suffered under Imperial oppression. He leaned forward. We didn't choose to come to your galaxy, but we're here. And we've decided we're going to make a difference. The Empire will hunt you relentlessly, Mon Mothma warned. Vader's report to the Emperor has made you priority alpha targets. There are bounties on each of you that could buy star systems. Good, Batman said flatly. Let them spend resources chasing us. Every credit they waste on bounty hunters is a credit not spent oppressing your people. Every star destroyer they deploy to hunt us is one that's not subjugating planets. We can be the chaos the Empire can't control, the variable in their calculations that refuses to be solved. Mon Mothma considered this for a long moment. Then she activated a holographic projector, showing a star system Batman didn't recognize. The Empire is constructing a second Death Star at Endor. Our intelligence suggests it's already operational, though they're claiming it's still under construction. We need confirmation, but every spy we've sent has either been captured or killed. The security is absolute. Batman studied the hologram with tactical intensity. You're asking me to infiltrate the most secure Imperial facility in the galaxy. I'm asking if it's possible, Mon Mothma replied. Because if anyone could accomplish it, our intelligence suggests it would be someone like you. Behind his cowl, Bruce Wayne smiled. Give me 3 days. I'll get you everything you need to know about their new battle station. On Mon Cala, Aquaman stood in the underwater command center of the Resistance, facing Admiral Akbar and the assembled leaders of both Mon Calamari and Quarren factions. The relationship between the two aquatic species had always been contentious, but Arthur had spent weeks building bridges between them, demonstrating that united, they were powerful enough to challenge Imperial occupation. The fleet is nearly complete, Akbar announced, gesturing to holographic displays showing massive ships hidden in the planet's deepest trenches. Star cruisers designed to stand against Imperial star destroyers. Frigates for fleet support. Corvettes for rapid strike operations. When we rise against the Empire, we will do so with naval power that can actually challenge them. But the orbital blockade remains, a Quarren commander objected. The moment we move our fleet to the surface, Imperial star destroyers will destroy us before we can even launch. Then we remove the blockade first, Arthur said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded Atlantis' forces for decades. I've analyzed their patrol patterns and defensive positions. They're strong, but not invulnerable. If we coordinate our uprising with a Rebel Alliance offensive, create simultaneous threats they have to respond to, we can break through. He pulled up tactical overlays showing Imperial weak points. 3 days from now, the Justice League will execute operations across multiple sectors, actions designed to draw Imperial attention and resources. In that moment of distraction, Mon Cala rises. Your fleet emerges. And the galaxy learns that the Empire's grip on the ocean worlds is broken. You speak of timing that requires perfect coordination, another commander said skeptically. How can you guarantee the Empire will be distracted at exactly the right moment? Arthur's smile was confident. Because my team doesn't fail. When we say we'll create chaos across the galaxy, you can bet your last credit that we will. Akbar's large eyes studied Arthur with respect. You fight for a people who are not your own, in a galaxy not your home. Why? Because tyranny is tyranny regardless of the galaxy, Arthur replied. And because leaders don't abandon people who need them. When I return to my world, if I return, I want to know that I left this galaxy better than I found it. On Mandalore, Green Lantern stood in Fen Rao's workshop, watching Mandalorian engineers examine his power ring with professional fascination. They couldn't replicate it, the technology was beyond their understanding, but they'd proposed something interesting. Your ring draws power from willpower itself, Fen Rao explained, gesturing to technical schematics. We cannot create more of this energy for you. But perhaps we can help you use less of it. Mandalorian armor incorporates personal shields, weapon systems, and flight capabilities. If you wore our armor, you would need fewer ring constructs for basic functions. Hal considered this, his ring showing 7% charge, barely enough for one more major engagement. You're proposing I become a Mandalorian warrior. We are proposing a partnership, Fen Rao corrected. You have earned our respect through combat. Many clans would consider it an honor to have you wear their colors. In exchange, you train our pilots in techniques you have learned across your travels. Your combat experience spans galaxies, that knowledge is worth more than Beskar. And when my ring finally dies? Hal asked quietly. What then? Then you are still a warrior and a pilot, Fen Rao said firmly. The weapon does not make the warrior. We have seen you fight without relying entirely on your ring. You have skills that transcend that device. Should it fail, you would still have a place among Mandalorians. Hal looked at his ring, the device that had defined him for years, now counting down to inevitable failure. Then he looked at the Mandalorian armor being offered, a different kind of power, one that didn't depend on connections to home galaxies that might no longer be accessible. "Teach me your ways," Hal said. "And I'll teach you mine. When the Justice League needs me, I'll be ready, with or without the ring." On Naboo, Wonder Woman trained a group of young Force sensitives who'd survived Order 66. They were children mostly, hidden by sympathetic families, too young to have been formally inducted into the Jedi Order but old enough to remember what the Order represented. "The Force is powerful," Diana told them, demonstrating a combat form that merged Amazonian technique with respect for mystical energy. "But it is not the only power in the galaxy. True strength comes from within, from courage, from conviction, from refusing to surrender your principles even when the universe demands it." One student, a Twi'lek girl named Numa, watched with wide eyes. "Master Diana, the Empire says the Jedi were traitors. That they deserve to die. But you fight like a Jedi. Aren't you afraid?" "I fight like an Amazon," Diana corrected gently. "We have different traditions, different philosophies. But we share a common belief, that those with power have a responsibility to protect those without it. The Jedi understood that. So do I." She knelt to Numa's level. "And no, I'm not afraid. Fear is the weapon tyrants use to control people. When you refuse to be afraid, you take their greatest weapon away." "Will you teach us to be like you?" another student asked. "To fight without fear." "I will teach you to be like yourselves," Diana replied. "To find your own strength, your own courage. The galaxy needs heroes, yes, but it needs you to be your own kind of hero, not copies of what came before." Sabe, the resistance leader who'd first recruited Diana to Naboo's cause, watched from the doorway with tears in her eyes. "You give them hope," she said quietly. "Something the Empire has spent years trying to crush." "Hope cannot be crushed," Diana replied. "Only forgotten. We're here to remind people it still exists." On Corellia, Flash had become an urban legend. Barry Allen moved through the industrial cities at speeds that security cameras couldn't capture, liberating political prisoners, sabotaging Imperial supply lines, and leaving behind a calling card, a simple lightning bolt symbol, that let people know the impossible was possible. He'd connected with the local resistance, providing them with intelligence gathered at superhuman speed and executing rescue operations they'd considered suicide missions. His Speed Force connection had stabilized at 54%, still declining, but more slowly than before. He'd learned to work within his limitations, using tactical thinking to supplement raw speed. "Another shipment of prisoners is being transferred to the Imperial detention facility tonight," a resistance fighter named Draven told him in a secure meeting. "Political dissidents, rebel sympathizers, people whose only crime was speaking against the Empire. We've been planning to intercept the transport, but the security is heavy. Stormtroopers, escort vehicles, air support. It's a trap waiting to happen. Then we spring the trap on them instead," Barry said, his mind already processing the tactical situation at accelerated speed. "What if the prisoners were already gone before the transport even reached the facility? What if Imperial security arrived to an empty convoy and no explanation for what happened?" "That's impossible," Draven objected. "The prisoners are locked in secure cells inside armored transports. You'd need to phase through the armor, unlock each cell individually, and evacuate dozens of people, all while the convoy is moving and under guard." Flash grinned behind his cowl. "Impossible is kind of my specialty. Give me the route and timing. I'll handle the rest." 6 hours later, an Imperial convoy arrived at the detention facility with empty cells and confused guards who swore the prisoners had simply vanished mid-transport. The freed dissidents found themselves in safe houses across Corellia, each carrying a message: the Flash was here. The Empire can be beaten. Cyborg had become a ghost in the Imperial network, present everywhere and nowhere, his consciousness distributed across thousands of systems simultaneously. He fed intelligence to the rebellion, disrupted Imperial communications, and created digital chaos that made the Empire paranoid about their own infrastructure. But more than that, Victor had been researching. His mother box technology gave him unique access to galactic databases. And he'd been searching for any information about dimensional rifts, hyperspace anomalies, or technology that might enable them to return home. What he'd found was both promising and terrifying. There are records, Victor told Batman during an encrypted holocall, his digital form flickering. Ancient Sith archives mention something called the World Between Worlds, a mystical dimension that exists outside normal space and time. According to the fragmentary information I've recovered, it could theoretically access other universes entirely. Could theoretically, Batman repeated. What are the practical obstacles? It's on a planet called Lot Hal, inside a Jedi temple that the Empire has been excavating, Cyborg explained. And access requires force sensitivity, something none of us possess. Plus, the archives suggest using it comes with catastrophic risks. Reality itself might destabilize if you try to force open doorways that should remain closed. So it's possible but dangerous and potentially inaccessible, Batman summarized. File it as a long-term contingency. What about the boom tube technology that brought us here? Any progress reverse engineering what happened? My mother box recorded data from the dimensional rift, Victor said. But recreating those conditions would require energy on a scale I can't even calculate. We're talking about power sources that might not exist in this galaxy. Or. He hesitated. There might be one option. The Death Star. If we could access its reactor core, redirect its power through mother box technology. That's suicide, Batman said flatly. Even considering it is. I know, Cyborg interrupted. But it might be our only chance of going home. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm saying it's possible. Batman was silent for a long moment. Noted as an extreme contingency. For now, focus on supporting the rebellion and keeping Imperial intelligence off balance. We're not sacrificing ourselves for a slim chance of escape. Not while we can still make a difference here. Agreed, Victor said. Besides, I've kind of gotten used to being a thorn in the Empire's side. Their security protocols are so fun to subvert. On a neutral space station in the Outer Rim, Superman met with representatives from a dozen different resistance movements, not official Rebel Alliance members, but independent groups fighting Imperial oppression on their homeworlds. They'd asked for this meeting, drawn by reports of the warrior who could not be killed, who'd stood against Vader and survived. Clark stood before them without his mask, a calculated decision to show these people that he trusted them with his identity. I know why you're here, he began. You've heard stories about what happened on Dantooine. You want to know if those stories are true, and whether the Justice League will help your worlds. The Empire has occupied my homeworld for 12 years, a Rodian representative said. They've strip-mined our resources, enslaved our people, and executed anyone who resists. The Rebel Alliance tells us to wait, to be patient, that open rebellion will only bring retaliation. But how long are we supposed to wait while our people suffer? We don't have your powers, a human woman added. We can't fight star destroyers or survive lightsabers. But you can. If you helped us, if you showed the Empire that our worlds won't be conquered quietly, it could inspire others. It could change everything. Superman looked at these desperate people, representatives of worlds ground under Imperial tyranny, and felt the weight of responsibility he'd always carried. I can't promise miracles, he said honestly. My team and I are 7 people in a galaxy of trillions. We can't liberate every world, can't fight every battle. But... He straightened, his cape settling around his shoulders. We can be symbols. We can demonstrate that resistance is possible. And we can support your movements with intelligence, tactical assistance, and, when necessary, direct intervention. Then you'll help us, the Rodian asked, hope evident in his voice. We'll help, Clark confirmed. But understand, this won't be easy. The Empire will retaliate. People will die. Freedom has a cost, and it's usually paid in blood. Are your people ready for that? We've been ready for years, the human woman said. We were just waiting for someone to show us it was possible. Then let's show the galaxy, Superman said. 3 days from now, the Justice League executes coordinated operations across multiple sectors. When we move, you move with us. Simultaneous uprisings on a dozen worlds. The Empire can't suppress all of you at once. Some will fail, that's the reality of war. But some will succeed. And those successes will inspire others. A coordinated galactic uprising, someone breathed. The Empire will respond with overwhelming force. Let them, Clark replied. Every star destroyer they send to crush these rebellions is one less hunting the main rebel alliance. Every stormtrooper deployed to your worlds is one less occupying others. We draw Imperial attention, create chaos, and give the rebellion breathing room to organize. You're talking about making yourselves bait, the Rodian observed. We're talking about being heroes, Superman corrected. That's what my team does. We stand between innocent people and those who would harm them. The galaxy you're in doesn't change that responsibility. 3 days. That was the timeline they'd all agreed on. In 3 days, the Justice League would execute the most ambitious coordinated operation they'd ever attempted, spanning multiple sectors, challenging Imperial authority on dozens of worlds simultaneously, and demonstrating to the galaxy that resistance was not only possible but inevitable. Batman would infiltrate the Death Star and gather critical intelligence. Wonder Woman would lead the Force-sensitive younglings in a raid that would liberate one of the Empire's secret detention facilities. Aquaman would coordinate Mon Cala's uprising and the emergence of their hidden fleet. Flash would execute simultaneous rescue operations across 3 star systems. Green Lantern would provide air support for Mandalorian operations against Imperial supply lines. Cyborg would crash Imperial communications across multiple sectors, creating digital chaos that would blind the Empire's coordination. And Superman would serve as the visible symbol, the warrior who stood against Vader and survived, now standing with oppressed peoples across the galaxy. It was ambitious. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of impossible mission the Justice League specialized in. On Ender's forest moon, Emperor Palpatine stood aboard his new Death Star, gazing out at the stars through massive viewports. Darth Vader stood behind him, silent and attentive. The anomalies have scattered, Palpatine said, his voice a dry rasp. They believe they can hide from us, that they can inspire rebellion through hit-and-run tactics. How predictable. They have proven more dangerous than anticipated, Master, Vader said carefully. Perhaps we should reconsider the capture mandate. Termination might be the more prudent course. No, Palpatine said, turning to face his apprentice. I have foreseen their purpose. These beings from beyond our galaxy represent something unprecedented, power that exists outside the Force's natural order. If we can capture and study them, if we can understand what makes them possible. His smile was terrible. We could create an army of such beings. Loyal to the Empire. Unstoppable by conventional means. And if they cannot be captured? Vader asked. Then we will demonstrate the futility of resistance, Palpatine replied. The Death Star is operational. When the anomalies reveal themselves again, and they will, we will be ready. Let them inspire their little rebellions. Let them convince dozens of worlds to rise up against us. And then. He gestured to the massive weapon platforms surrounding them. We will obliterate those worlds. Every planet that harbors the anomalies, every system that shelters them, erased. Until the galaxy understands that defying the Empire brings only annihilation. A harsh lesson, Master, Vader observed. The only lesson that matters, Palpatine corrected. Fear. Absolute fear of Imperial power. These anomalies have given the rebellion hope. We will transform that hope into despair so profound that resistance dies forever. In safe houses and bases across the galaxy, the Justice League prepared for the operation that would define their role in this new universe. They checked equipment, reviewed plans, and said quiet goodbyes to each other, just in case this was the mission that finally overwhelmed them. "We might not all survive this," Diana said during their final holoconference, her image flickering alongside her 6 teammates. "The Empire will respond with everything they have. Some of us might not make it back. Then we make sure our sacrifice means something," Arthur replied. "Every world we help liberate, every person we free, that's our legacy in this galaxy." "We've faced worse odds," Hal added, his ring glowing weakly at 5%. "Remember the anti-monitor? This is just another Tuesday for us. Except we're not going home after this one," Barry said quietly. "Win or lose, we're stuck here. This is our life now." "Then let's make it count," Clark said firmly. "We're the Justice League. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we don't stop fighting for what's right, no matter what galaxy we're in." "For truth," Diana said. "For justice," Clark added. "For each other," Bruce finished. "And for everyone who's counting on us to show them that hope isn't dead," Victor concluded. The Justice League had been scattered across a hostile galaxy. Their powers compromised, their way home uncertain or perhaps impossible. But they'd found a new purpose, a new mission that transcended their original mandate. They were no longer just Earth's defenders. They were symbols of resistance in a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight back. In 3 days, the Empire would learn what it meant to face heroes who refused to be broken. In 3 days, the galaxy would learn that tyranny could be challenged. In 3 days, the legend of the Justice League would become something more than stories whispered in shadows. It would become a revolution. Conclusion. The operation succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, and failed in ways no one anticipated. Batman infiltrated the Death Star and transmitted critical intelligence about its operational status, but he was forced to fight his way out when Palpatine himself sensed his presence. He escaped, barely, with burns from Force lightning and a new understanding of just how powerful the Emperor truly was. Wonder Woman liberated the detention facility and freed hundreds of political prisoners, but the cost was 3 Force-sensitive younglings who sacrificed themselves to buy time for others to escape. Diana carried their memories as both honor and burden. Aquaman coordinated Mon Cala's uprising flawlessly, the hidden fleet emerged and broke the Imperial blockade. But Admiral Mahdi's Star Destroyer crashed during the battle, taking 12,000 Mon Calamari with it in a retaliatory strike that showed the Empire's cruelty even in defeat. Flash executed his rescue operations with characteristic speed, freeing thousands across 3 systems. But his Speed-Force connection finally collapsed during the last extraction, leaving him with only normal human capabilities and the knowledge that his powers might never return. Green Lantern provided air support that turned the tide of multiple engagements. But his ring went dark over Mandalore after creating one final construct, a shield that protected an entire civilian evacuation. He survived, but the Green Lantern of Sector 2814 was now just Hal Jordan, skilled pilot and warrior, armed with Mandalorian weapons instead of cosmic power. Cyborg crashed Imperial communications across 12 sectors simultaneously, creating chaos that bought the Resistance precious hours. But the Empire purged him from their networks viciously, nearly destroying his consciousness in the process. He survived, but his access to Imperial intelligence was severed. And Superman stood on a dozen worlds as their symbol, inspiring uprisings that the Empire could not fully suppress. But on Ryloth, he faced Vader again, and this time, Palpatine was watching. The Emperor offered him a choice: surrender and spare Ryloth from orbital bombardment, or resist and watch millions die. Clark Kent surrendered. He allowed himself to be captured, taken to the Death Star, placed in containment designed to hold Force users. But before the Empire could begin studying him, the Rebel Alliance, emboldened by the Justice League's actions, coordinated by intelligence Batman had gathered, launched their own operation. The Battle of Endor erupted across the forest moon and the space above it. The Justice League, reunited one final time, fought alongside the rebellion in an engagement that would determine the galaxy's fate. They didn't have all their powers. Flash ran on adrenaline alone, Green Lantern fought with Mandalorian weapons, Superman was weakened from captivity. But they were together, and that had always been enough. When the second Death Star exploded, destroyed by rebel pilots exploiting weaknesses Batman had identified, the Justice League stood on Ender's surface and watched the fireworks that signified the Empire's beginning of the end. They never found their way home. The boom tube that brought them to this galaxy remained closed. And every attempt to recreate the conditions of their arrival failed. But they found something else, purpose in a new world, a cause that transcended their original mandate, and the knowledge that heroism wasn't bound by universe or dimension. Superman became a legend whispered across the Outer Rim, the man of steel who stood against the Empire and inspired countless worlds to find their courage. Wonder Woman established a new order of warriors, teaching combat and philosophy to those who'd survived the Empire's cruelty. Batman worked with New Republic intelligence, his tactical genius helping to hunt down Imperial remnants. Flash, even without his speed, became a symbol of resilience, proving that heroes were defined by spirit, not powers. Green Lantern flew with Mandalorian squadrons, his willpower undiminished even without the ring. Aquaman returned to Mon Cala, helping them rebuild and establish themselves as a major power in the New Republic. And Cyborg interfaced with New Republic systems, ensuring that the freedoms they'd fought for wouldn't be lost to bureaucracy or corruption. They were the Justice League in exile, 7 heroes from another world who'd given everything to protect a galaxy that wasn't theirs. Some called them legends. Others called them myths. But to the people they'd saved, to the worlds they'd inspired, to the resistance they'd empowered, they were something simpler and more profound. They were hope. And in a galaxy that had spent decades under darkness, hope burned brighter than any star. The Justice League never made it home. But they made a difference. And for heroes, that had always been enough. May the Force be with you. More stories await.